Please welcome to the stage the Vice President of Moms for America, a mom of three, and the host of the popular Moms for America weekly podcast, Debbie Kraulidis.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Oh, I'm so glad to see everybody here this morning. Such a great night last night, and just so encouraging, wasn't it? I don't know. I guess I'm just so thrilled because we've been working on this for so long, and you just want everyone to be blessed and encouraged. So Jim did such a great job, and Ben and Kevin. I do want to tell you one thing that Jim Caviezel said to me when I walked out and gave him his award. He goes, "You guys are so authentic." That's you. That's you. So thank you so much. As we come together this weekend, right, just to celebrate 20 years of Moms for America, our goal this weekend is to educate, inspire, and encourage all of you. We know as moms that these days are very trying in our home, in our country, and for our families. We know this more than anyone because we're moms. As a heartbeat of the home, which we talk about so much, we see the challenges daily, and we have to respond to them so quickly and so concisely because we're defending and protecting our children at every corner. We see the sadness in their eyes. I mean, I've got a 26 to 24 and a 19-year-old, and during COVID, boy, did I see the sadness in their eyes and the difficult situations we were in. As mothers, really, sometimes we feel like no one is listening, and really nobody's even helping us. And this is why Moms for America is so essential. We offer support, and we offer love to our moms, and we love our moms so much. So we are delighted to be offering help and support. We say this always, we're the ultimate support group for conservative moms. So I so hope you feel that and glean that from us this weekend and every day with all the classes and information that we offer to you. We're on a mission to raise faith-filled children that love God, value family, and honor country. But like I said, often as conservative moms, we just feel like our voice is not being heard, that no one is really paying attention. So that's why we are offering mentorship. We're offering teachings. We're here to lift you up, fill your souls, give moms the support that they need. I'm sure everyone is familiar with our signature program, which is the cottage meetings. I don't know if Jillian is in the house. She's been doing cottage meetings along with Kimberly for, I think, about 13, 14 years, even dating back to 20 years ago, actually, in Kim's home when she started it. That's our cottage meetings series, which is so important. We have homeschooling webinars. I think Liz is in the house. We have school board trainings. We have parenting tips, public policy, and incredible resources. And I just want to make sure, really, it's great to get together, but everybody goes back home, right? And it's the resources and the support and the seminars and the webinars that help our moms every day, every week. Also on the podcast, she mentioned that I host the podcast. I don't know if anybody watches or listens to the podcast with me, but we cover a lot of great information, topics that relate to you in your home. So please check out our podcast. It's a weekly podcast. All issues are mom issues. And we understand that so much. We invest in the role of motherhood, and this is really what is so important too, is that we invest in the role of motherhood because motherhood is so beautiful. It's so precious. It is essential, and it is divine. Moms, you are divine. You are divine. You are divine. The haters know this about us as moms, and that's why they fear us, those mom haters. Isn't that terrible to say there's mom haters out there? But we hear about them all the time, right? They try to redefine us. They try to rename us. But they can't win this war because they're messing with the wrong folks. They're messing with the moms. And we just don't put up with this. We have got too much at stake, too much that we value and too much that we will defend. I think they seem to they forget how powerful moms are and the mom movement. Just like the Deborahs and the Esthers, and you know exactly who you are in this room. You're Deborahs and you're Esthers. Founding mothers like Abigail Adams, like Martha Washington. You're in this room too. Or like the recent warriors, Phyllis Schlafly or Kimberly Fletcher. Right? We are all these women. We have all those attributes, all those strengths. The Esthers, the Deborahs, the Marthas, the Abigails, the Kimberly, the Phyllises. We're all those. We are incredible fighters, and we are undeniable influencers in our homes and in our country. Mothers have been called by God. This is it, and we will not let anyone or anything come in our way. This incredible calling is the most beautiful and feminine blessing we carry, and we carry, nurture life. Of course, life also terrifies the left. We know that because we understand how incredibly important life is, because our womb is a sanctuary. It's a holy place where it all begins, and that terrifies them too. So when we look into our baby's eyes and we see them for the first time, and we raise them, we know the importance of life and this calling, because we know that we are their lifeline, we're their hope, and we're their moms forever. On a plane last week, I was kind of writing my thoughts down, and I had my computer open, and this gentleman came up to me right afterwards, and he said, "Excuse me, honey." I said, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, okay, what's going on? I don't know. He's like, "I want to talk to you really quick." And he gives me this note on the plane, and he said, "I want you to take this. I really feel like the Lord wanted me to give you this note." And I thought, "Oh, how cute is that? You know, what is it?" You know, I thought he was giving me his number. Seriously, I thought this old man was giving me his number on this piece of paper. And so I was just trying to kind of be sweet about it, but no, it wasn't his number. This is what he wrote to me. He goes, "I saw what you were reading. I saw what you were typing there." And he said, in this note, he said, mothers, he's 78 years old, by the way. On this note, he says, "Mothers are gifts from God. They are the most important people on earth. Mothers never die as long as we live, because they live in us and all who we know and love." Leonard. He sat there and he talked to me about his mom. And he got all choked up and he said, "Do you know the power of you as a mom?" He goes, "I think about my mom every day." And I thought, you know what? I said to him, I go, "Leonard, I thought you were trying to pick me up." And he laughs. He says, "Oh, no, you're cute." But, and I said, "I will let them know. I will read this to the moms when I see them." Just the power of moms. Here's a 78-year-old man in tears about the powerful impact that his mom made. I think about my mom. I lost her when I was 27. So, I mean, moms are just so precious. They're so divine. They're so called. I became involved with Moms for America. I've shared this story 8 years ago when my kids were in high school and middle school, and I was looking for a tribe. I had been involved in the pro-life movement. I had been involved in the political landscape, but I was looking for a tribe. I was looking for my friends, and I found them at Moms for America, and I sure hope you have. I sure hope you have. So, moms, I'm going to wrap it up because I got the wrap-up sign, but I do want to close with this. We are powerful. We have a divine calling. Every single one of you moms, you're so special. And to the dads in here, you are incredible too. You're defending your families. You're protecting your kids. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Dad, grandpas. to the grandmas. We talk to you all the time, but the dads are so important. So I know there's some men in the house, and I do want to recognize them and say thank you for supporting us, because we really can't do it without our boys. We can't. So moms, here we go. Here's my challenge. Together as moms, we can do this. We will pray. We will give more than we can. Amen. We will pray without ceasing. We will love big and run faster. We will dream those impossible dreams. We will rise to every occasion as we make motherhood our top priority and be the light in this world of confusion. We will champion truth. We will walk by faith. We will be forever grateful for this calling, the honor and the role of being a mom. We can do this, moms. We got you. We love you. Thank you so much. God bless.
The American dream, full of grit, determination, hard work, and unthinkable achievements. Building and owning your own business is a monumental task. Preserving your dream in today's business environment has become a multi-layered challenge. A place to find guidance, resources, and connections doesn't exist. Until now. The Freedom Chamber, the pro-American business network.
He is the best-selling author and host of the Lance Wallnau Show. Lance is a social media influencer who provides clarity on complex issues impacting faith and culture. Please welcome Lance Wallnau.
Hello. Hey! This is such a great experience. I didn't realize till I got here today how much of my life is actually run by women. My business partner is a woman, obviously. And my producer is a woman. My assistant's a woman. I'm trying to get my sons to work with me. They said there's too many women over there. But Kimberly Fletcher, so Kimberly and Debbie, I've just ran into these great women in Washington at an AFPI meeting. And I said, you know, what's going to save America is going to be an invigorating reorganization of latent potential in the grassroots. Nothing else is going to work in America. The left has things so organized and so funded. I mean, I'm not saying something you don't know, but we woke up to an America where we thought we were electing people and paying taxes, and somebody was watching out for us. Well, they weren't. They were being romanced and bought off and penetrated and encircled by forces that want to completely take over America. And if you don't know that, just see what's going on in your own school system. So let me just bring it right home to you. I'm sitting down for a couple of years. I was talking about 7 mountains. I just had this concept because I kept running into these great leaders, thought leaders in the Christian community, like Francis Schaeffer and Chuck Colson and Lauren Cunningham with Youth with a Mission and Bill Bright with Campus Crusade. And they talked about these 7 verticals, these 7 institutions, these 7 domains that shape the country. And if Christians could only learn to go into those areas more intentionally, they could literally fulfill the Great Commission that's in the Bible, which is to make disciples of nations. And this is so important. So I'm listening to them there, and I said, what are those domains? And they had the church. Well, Christians ought to really occupy the church. I mean, that's obvious. And then family and church. Well, I know that because I'm part Jewish. 2% of the United States is Jewish. And look at the influence Jewish people have had in the United States. And honestly, from Dershowitz to Streisand to Seinfeld to Bernstein, we're at the top of all of these domains. It's fascinating because Jewish mothers raised their sons to be doctors and lawyers and rabbis. What is that? That's the head and not the tail. It's above and not beneath. Am I talking to people? I mean, this makes sense to you? We Gentiles need to get this. And I think in every woman, there's something that resonates with a Jewish mother. And I'll make that point in a second. So you take the family mountain and the church mountain. Well, the rabbis and the synagogue and the church and the family, or the synagogue and the family, that's all the Jewish people have ever had. but it's enough to preserve an identity so that it can go into academia, into politics, into media, into Hollywood, into business and corporate development. Look, think about it. Business, news, entertainment, government, education. I'm giving you the 5 areas that are shaping America that we slept while somebody took over. Then you wake up and find out corporations have this diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is nothing more than a warmed-over Marxist concept that there's going to be a reorganization of who gets the job and who doesn't based upon party alignment. Then you've got Hollywood. Hollywood comes out with a movie this week, Rob Reiner. I find out from friends of mine that are saying, hey, here's the links. Are you seeing what they're doing? I'm on a trailer from a movie paid by Castle Rock Productions. I think it's linked to Joanne Jobs, who's got the Apple fortune. They're helping to fund on dangerous domestic terror organizations. And then I show up. Me. Well, why am I? Because of this seven mountains dominionism, they call it. You know what all I'm saying is? I'm trying to map out how the left took over America, and they're accusing me of being a threat. They have a movie. Thank God the movie is bombing. It's a very good movie, I'm told. I'll have to watch it. But it's bombing. It had 85 theaters open up on the threat of Christian nationalism and dominionism. They're trying. Are you noticing the Christian national thing going on? They're trying to vilify anyone who associates with the name Christian by making them look like a dangerous domestic extremist. And here's the problem. If you don't have strong churches and strong pulpits that are actually supporting you, their silence causes you to have to find support someplace else. And that's why organizations like this are so critical. Because when men don't lead, women must fill the void. So back to the women in my life. So my wife has... She pulls me, we're having our anniversary. We're almost married 40 years. So we have an anniversary a couple years ago. She's helped me build everything I'm doing. I got ministry, I got different stuff I do. And she says to me, do you know what? There are women in Fort Worth that are living in their cars. I go, there's a lot to be outraged over, but I didn't know that. I didn't know about that, no. She goes, and she starts talking about how she's going to do something for the children, because the children are being raised in vans and in cars. They don't have housing. She's working with the YMCA. She's going to find... And the Lord told me something. He said, your whole life, your wife has been dutifully working on the things that are important to you. This is the season where you find out what's important to her. So instead of changing the subject, just listen. So we had our anniversary dinner, and Nancy Hansen's a friend of mine up in Philadelphia. She bought us dinner because I was speaking with Dutch Sheets at a prayer conference, and my wife was with me. So she said, oh, it's your anniversary. I can't believe you're doing this on your anniversary. Go out, and she got a restaurant for us. So we're talking. Next thing I know, my wife has no education in this, no background, no funding, just passion and vision. This is what women can do. And she goes, I'm going to do something. So she calls a girlfriend, and they start getting money for mattresses for the children in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of single mothers who choose not to abort their child, but to raise their child, but they're below like the poverty index. They need help. So she rents out a warehouse and starts filling it with mattresses. Next thing you know, another warehouse. And then I got 5 warehouses. I find that it's on a credit card. And I'm looking, I go, what the world? And the Lord says, this is the vision, and she's believing, and she's doing her thing. Now, your job is to keep up with her. So I go, all right. I remember one day, someone said to me, I said, you know, it's cost you almost like $40,000 to fund your wife's warehouses. And it's called Furnishing Families of Texas. My God, how many families are in Texas? So the next, I'm telling this story for a reason. So 5 warehouses. I said to her, I said, just like recently, I said, not exactly. Why do we need 5 warehouses? She said, well, because people give me, people give me things. Hotels call me up when they're getting rid of a whole inventory, and I have to have a place to put all the furniture and all the pictures and all the flowers. I go, so we get this straight. You're not just like doing mattresses. She goes, we fully furnished over 700 apartments for single mothers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. No degree, no program, no fundraising mechanism, just a passion and a vision from God. I started listening to some phone calls that she's got. She's got a guy named, and she hires her girlfriend's kids or women, moms that have children. All of the kids, all the people working for her, somehow she knows the family, and the mothers are a big part of it. So I'm going, all right, let me get this straight. you got this one guy who was like a former, he doesn't mind me telling, this former alcoholic. I mean, he wasn't even a Christian. He was out dying, liver's dying. And then COVID hits, and he's in a coma. But, this is Christians think this way, but he did give his life to the Lord. He did get saved. He got delivered from alcohol, and he's working with Annabelle, and he has peace. And I'm thinking, what a beautiful story. The man's in a sense, it's sad that his life is kind of like ending, but he ended victoriously. He ended with peace. He ended with a testimony. My wife says, what are you talking about? We're not letting him go. I said, honey, he's like on a ventilator. He's a month on a ventilator. The doctors are saying they want to put him into, they want to pull the plug. She goes, oh, absolutely not. I hear a Zoom call. I don't know if you ever hear Pentecostals on a Zoom call. It is a frightening experience. It's like, I don't know, banshees attacking a village. So it's like, I'm in the other room in my office. I go, what the heck? She's out there commanding, praying, binding, loosing. Tears are flying. And all the women are with her. So I backed out. Next thing I know, the guy's off the ventilator. He's back to work. Joel. I said, and the Lord said to me, he said, that's the problem with you. I would smite the arrows 3 times. It's a good testimony. He got saved. He got delivered. That's a good thing. Honey, what do you expect? She goes, he's going to get resurrected. Because she knows her mother, and the job isn't done yet. You understand what I'm talking about? This is tapping into the latent potential that's in America of the grassroots movement, which is the mothers. This is the one thing the left cannot work its way around, which is the women in America is the movement potential. Now, I invest in this stuff with the 7 mountains. I'm looking at where's the movement that could be like a Breitbart is moving over here and doing his thing. Steve Bannon over here with Real America's Voice with Rob. I know Charlie Kirk. I work with Charlie Kirk with the youth in the camp. Anytime there's a Holy Spirit insurrection against the devil, I want to find out who's leading it. I want to find out who's funding it. I want to get behind it and see what's happening. And so I'm happy to say that we're discovering the movement potential I thought might be in the youth, but it wasn't in the youth. I thought it might be in the professional community, but it's not there yet. I thought it might be in the populist movement, in the Republican Party. That's kind of its greatest power, but it's not movement yet. It's just organizing. The women represent the movement capacity in America. Listen to me. Movement is something you can't create. It's something you discover. When a movement is developing, it's like a wave. You just kind of back up and you estimate how to get on board and ride. And here's where the devil overreached. I heard you talking about Esther. I heard you talking about Deborah. Mercedes Sparks, who works with me as a business manager and partner in our business stuff, she said, you ought to take a look at JL. I go, JL? She said, yes, because while Deborah was mobilizing the generals to go to war, when they won, it was the commander on the field that was driven into looking for a place to hide, and he went into the tent of Jael. It's in Judges chapter 4. And he goes into the tent of a woman. And when he comes in, he says, hide me here. So she hides him under the carpet. This is a brutal chapter in Jewish history. Hides him under the carpet. He says, I need something to drink. She gets him milk, gives him a glass of milk, has him under the carpet. And then this is the enemy in her tent, hiding out. And then she goes and gets a nail, figures out exactly where his head is, and boom, drives a nail into his head. And thus, the Bible says, she took out the enemy of Israel who made the mistake of getting into her house. When the trans movement, we've lost the battle, I'm sorry to say, it's going to be hard to get the horses back in the barn on the entire gay movement. It's become almost so marketed that 25% of Gen Zs on TikTok want to be gender fluid, queer, or bisexual because it's now marketed as a badge of coolness. So young people are being marketed into that. But when they went to the trans element, see, the trans thing is where the big money is. You want to really get cynical on the dark side of things? Forget about the Planned Parenthood industry and the money that's behind that because of the money that's made off of the abortion industry. The trans industry trumps it. In the trans industry, it'll be like $1 million per person over the lifetime because of the surgeries and the medicine and the chemicals and the blah, 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 blah. So the pharmaceutical business looks at this like a cash cow. The more young people there are who are just going to decide to go from being a boy to a girl or a girl to a boy, every one of them represents a lot more money than a one-time procedure at Planned Parenthood. So you've got the big pharma machinery boom and all the apparatus of the lawyers and the doctors and the psychologists who will get paid off to produce the white papers to justify the fact that your 11-year-old child may be trapped in the wrong body, and then we're going to have to surgically give them peace of mind. So you've got, the problem is, it's gone into the tent of Jael and come into your house now. And in the Bible, when the devil comes into your house, you have authority to destroy that power. Coming after your children. I'm working with, for instance, in Colorado, we've got a thing called Protect Kids Colorado, or what do we say? Yeah, Protect Kids Colorado, that's what it is. I'm trying to get the mothers mobilized whose children were almost suicidal because they were being groomed in Skittles, in art class, in the high school at 11 and 12. Parents drop the kids off, and they switch out the teacher for a paid activist who comes in to evangelize the kids into the LGBTQ movement, looking for transgender candidates in the classroom. And then they support them and zero in on them and help them and groom them for the transition. So the parents are finding out about it. We're starting a ballot measure, and the government is blocking our ability to mobilize the mothers. Big mistake, because the corrupt government is stopping the mothers from even having a ballot initiative to discuss mothers being informed about what the school's doing to their children. And the corrupt government in Colorado is stopping them from doing it. So the case is going to the Supreme Court. Where did this thing get mobilized? Me having a conversation with moms. That's how it happened. And you have the self-organizing power to transform America. You are a latent grassroots force that has movement potential. The enemy has come into your tent and made a big miscalculation. You are not like men. You will not be apathetic. You won't shrug your shoulders and abdicate, because when it comes to your children, God gave you an instinct to fight for their survival. You are a mama bear. So you are the movement that is still growing. We're going to be, Kimberly and I are working together right now on a courage tour. We're trying to go around the country and give men courage, give pastors courage, give believers courage. Because if we can have an 81% turnout, 82%, 83% of us Christians show up, they can't win. That's why the attack on Christian nationalism. They're trying to suppress Christians because they see Christians as the enemy because of the 81% turnout factor we had last time. Well, we're going to hold the line. The Courage Tour, Kimberly and I are going to be working on. I want you to pay attention for news about this. We're going to be going to the battleground states. We're going to be going to Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania. We're going to swing over to Nevada, boom, bob over there probably in Carolina. And you're going to be a part of it, your daughters, your friends. If you are with this movement, I have no doubt, the Mama Bear movement, the women's movement, and this organization, Moms for America, is going to be at the forefront of saving America. Stay tuned. Go to thecouragetour.com, couragetour.com, and join the battle. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Mona Corwin is an author, speaker, and the mom mentor. She founded the Moms Like Us Academy and is on the Moms for America Board of Directors. Please welcome Mona, the mom mentor.
There we go. I need this. Okay. Hi there. I want to tell you something. There was a day when I was shocked. I was disturbed. It was a moment I'll never forget. After 20 years of studying the feminist movement, I stood looking at a document that made my heart sink with sadness and disgust. I'm going to share that document with you and other facts this morning, things about the feminist movement that you can't find on Google, things women, Christian women, need to know. One more. Side note, this is a QR code. I'm going to talk really, really fast, and there's going to be lots of things you're going to want to write down. Don't write them down. Just take a picture of that, and you can get my slides, my gift to you. Okay, let's get ready. Feminism. It's a word as common today as Taylor Swift. We have all been influenced by the feminist movement at one time or another. And I myself, in my teenage years, would have considered myself a feminist. However, at the time, I wasn't a Christian, but if I had been a Christian, I would have loved to be able to label myself as a Christian feminist. However, at the time, it hadn't hit our culture yet, and I was already fully aware of the disaster that feminism was in our culture, what it had done, what it truly is, and the history behind it, the damage that it is doing to the culture around us. In my story, I had already laid down my boots that were made for walking, and I was thrilled with the results of the shedding the feminist label. You know what? I loved being a girl. My goal is not to tell you not to call yourself a Christian feminist, though my provocative title, Stop Calling Yourself a Christian Feminist, may sound like it. My goal is to inform you and educate you so that when you are done being educated, you will still know and know why you are calling yourself a Christian feminist. You know, words mean things. Words mean things. If you are going to call yourself something and identify with it, you best know what it means. Feminism. I have to tell you, nobody can nail this thing down. Radical feminism, Marxist feminism, socialist feminism, it's hard to keep up with it. But most women will consider themselves equality feminist. An equality feminist isn't ranting and usually isn't running around angry. They would say, look, we're just innocent. We just want equal pay for equal work, and we want to be considered equal to what men are. But you know what, friend? If it was just that, and that's all feminism was, we could stop right now. But it's not. It's not even close. Feminism always puts the equality front toward the camera because it's the most attractive side. Let's look at the underbelly of the not-so-sweet side of the feminist movement. It's going to be a fast ride as we look at the history and the aspects of the feminist movement. So let's get with it. Equal pay. We've heard all that. We've all heard that, right? Well, equal pay is there you go. Equal pay. The truth is, there is no such thing as a glass ceiling, and it doesn't exist. Women are now able to do whatever they want and be whoever they want to be, and that includes the Vice President of the United States of America. John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act in 1963. The act required working women to be paid the same as male counterparts and performing the same job at the same level at the same experience. Then, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act solidified further with equality and fair play. The Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. We are covered by law and have been since 1964. Am I on schedule? Yeah. The fighting for women lie. The truth, it was never about equal pay. We actually had laws for that, and I just showed you some of them on the slides. It was about destroying men and gaining power. And I'm now going to show you the document that sank my heart. I can't show you everything that I found in 20 years plus in my research this morning, But if you want to know more, I will help you. You can contact me and I'll help you walk through it. I'm going to show you right now what the feminists say in their own words, words that expose the core and the agenda of feminism. Here we go. The following document is a testimony of Mallory Millett, an eyewitness of the very beginnings of the second wave of feminism in the late 1960s. Mallory is the sister of Kate Millett. She is one of the founders of the second wave feminism and the National Organization for Women. You've heard of it, right? After Mallory's conversion to Christianity, she exposed her sister in the true agenda of the meetings of NOW. Kate, Mallory's sister, brought together 12 women in New York City in the 1960s. These women laid the groundwork. They are the ones for the second wave feminism, and they've given us what we've got today in our woke culture. Mallory says, "It was 1969 and my sister took me to a meeting, a consciousness-raising meeting, an idea imported from Mao." I could talk about that for 2 hours. 12 women gathered at a large table. They opened with a type of litany that you would find in a Catholic church, but this time it was Marxism, the church of the left. The cultural revolution that they talked about, the litany went like this. Why are we here today, the chairwoman asked? To make a revolution. You can read along. Why are we here today? The chairwoman asked. To make a revolution, they answered. What kind of revolution, she replied. The cultural revolution, they chanted. And how are we gonna get that cultural revolution, she demanded. By destroying the American family, they answered back. And how do we destroy the American family? She came back. By destroying the American patriarch, they cried exuberantly. And how do we destroy the American patriarch, she probed? By taking away his power. And how do we do that? By destroying monogamy, they shouted. How can we destroy monogamy? By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, abortion, and homosexuality, they resounded. They proceeded with a long discussion on how to advance these goals by establishing the National Organization of Women. It was very clear that they desired nothing less than the utter destruction of the Western civilization. The method, the only method, was to invade every American institution. Everyone must be permeated with the revolution. The media, the educational system, the universities, the high schools, the K through 12, school boards, etc., then the judiciary, the legislatures, the executive branches, and get this, even the public library. Does that sound familiar? Mallory also said one of the most desirable results they had was the smashing of every taboo in Western culture. Can you imagine that? Think of that alone. The normalizing of every taboo. Polygamy, bestiality, Satanism, pornography, promiscuity, witchcraft, and pedophilia. All activities which rot the human soul and the world. Nothing burns down a society with such dispatch and totality as the unleashing of taboos. There he is. Paul King is an expert in communism, and he states, Kate Millett challenged all of her revolutionary nostrils into the campaign to take down traditional marriage and family. He cites 3 people for the disassembling of Western society: Karl Marx, Herbert Marcuse, and Kate Millett. The War on Marriage and Family. Linda Gordon. Oh, we got to get her. There she is. Linda Gordon is a feminist author and a professor. The nuclear family must be destroyed. Whatever its ultimate meaning, the breakup of the family is now the objectively revolutionary process No woman should have to deny herself the opportunities that she wants because of her responsibility to her children. Parental authority, guess what? They're not your kids. This is what they said. One way philosophers might be about solving the social injustice problem would be to simply abolish the family. If the family is the source of unfairness in society, then it looks plausible to think that if we can abolish the family, there would be a more level playing field. Adam Swift, can you believe that? Melissa Harris Perry, the social feminist, had an idea. She said, we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or that kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to their communities. Yeah, here's another great one. That's that one. Oh, there's so many, y'all. I had so many. It's not going. There we go. We're going to talk about motherhood. Motherhood in the eyes of the my note. I'll read it. As long as mothers, all right. As long as the woman is the primary caretaker of childhood, she is prevented from being a true human being. Kate Millett. The chief thing is to get women to take part in a socially productive labor, to liberate them from domestic slavery and to free them from their stupefying and humiliating subjugation to the eternal drudgery of the kitchen and the nursery. This struggle will be a long one, and it demands radical reconstruction of both social and of moral. But in the end, it will be the complete triumph of communism. And that, my friends, is Lenin. How about this one? A mother, a parasite sucking out the living strength of another organism. The housewife and mother's labor does not even tend toward the creation of anything durable. A woman's work within the home is not directly useful to society, and it produces nothing. The housewife and the mother are subordinate, secondary, parasitical. It is for their common welfare that the situation must be altered, prohibiting marriage as a career for women. Yeah, it is. Parental authority. They aren't your kids. Okay, we already did them, right? What have they achieved? Have they achieved their goal? You bet they have. Pornography, look at it, 28,000 users per second, $13 billion yearly. Abortion is hovering around 1 million per year and rising. The divorce rate, 50%, no matter how you look at it or what, if you're a Christian or not. They are moving, y'all, pay attention. They are moving to normalize pedophilia by redefining it as minor attracted love. Satanism is on the rise, and it's on every stage, no, not every stage, not this one, and of concerts in the United States. Transgenderism is being validated even in women's sports. Hey, where's the feminists, right? I love that cover. That's a real cover. According to Time magazine, after 60 years of feminism, where they were going to make us all happy and we were going to have everything that we needed, women are more unhappy than ever. Despite more freedom, more employment than ever before, they have higher levels of anxiety and that. That's what we get right there. I come to the close of my talk with you, and if you want that QR code, you can have it. I want to leave you with some hope. In the 1960s, Helen Reddy wrote a song called I Am Woman. Remember it? It lit a fire underneath the feminist movement, and the redefining of woman began. Well, good news. There is a huge trend, a new movement of women, and though we don't have our own song yet, we are women who won't be defined or find our identity in feminism. We are We love our God and we love his design, and we are hungry to learn how to live it for him. And we are everywhere. So, no, I won't be calling myself a Christian feminist. I am a Christian woman, period. Thank you. That is my identity. It tells me who I am, who I belong to, but more than that, it tells me why I'm here and how to live. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm a friend. I'm a woman. And unlike feminist liberals, I actually know the definition.
The sobering reality is that evil exists in our country. We have real enemies. I started to think about what more could I do? We will always have challenges in our lives. We will always have enemies that will come after this country. We're fundamentally responsible for securing our future. When we think about children and we think about the incredible evil that exists, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to bring it up. That's the red line. Our mission is to protect and defend our constitutional and God-given rights, understanding who we are as Americans, what we are capable of doing as Americans when we put our mind to it. Fight Like a Flynn actually was created by the American people. It became a hashtag. Fight Like a Flynn PAC is solely going to be focused on America and America first. Our freedoms are not guaranteed. The faith of our nation is being tested. The destiny of America will be decided on what you do today.
Paid for by Fight Like a Flynn, flynnpac.com. Not authorized by any candidate.
Tim Barton is the president of Wall Builders and spends countless hours researching the truth of America's founding and exposing the lies regarding our history that now permeate our society. Let's welcome Tim Barton.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to be with you. I want to take you on a journey through American history for a little bit this morning. I want to encourage and challenge you, and I'm going to start, if we can get my image up on the screen behind me, I'm going to start with a letter from John Adams in 1813. John Adams wrote Thomas Jefferson. They had finally become friends again. They had gone through a journey in their life. They were friends. They weren't friends. Now they're friends again. At the end of their life, they begin a series of letters back and forth. They're two grumpy old men just writing letters to each other. But in this one letter, 1813, John Adams says to Jefferson, remember all those years, like decades ago? Remember when we were kids and we were together at the beginning of the cause of liberty, and we were so divided as a group on sentiments, but we found common ground. And as he reflects on the common ground they found, one of the things he says is the general principles upon which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. Now, what's remarkable about this is John Adams is recollecting what brought us all together. It was the principles of Christianity that brought them all together. And for John Adams to make this statement, for most people in modern culture, that seems like an anathema, right? The idea that Christianity was what brought the founding fathers together, or those principles from the Bible. But if you actually study history, you realize how much history affirms this thought. For example, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, in the Declaration, as we're listing all of the reasons that we should separate from Great Britain, we should become our own nation, in all of these ideas, there was a historian back in the 1940s. Her name was Alice Baldwin. She was a professor at Duke University. She wrote a book called The New England Clergy in the American Revolution. And in this book, she went through and identified that every single major issue in the Declaration had actually been preached from American pulpits prior to 1763, more than a dozen years before we even get to the Declaration of Independence. Pastors were actually talking about all of these major issues. But what her conclusion was is when the founding fathers come together and they begin discussing the ideas of freedom, the ideas that birth America, it actually wasn't their ideas at all. It was what they had learned from their pastors. And the idea that the founding fathers were influenced by their pastors is so contrary to the modern version of the history narrative, right? If you talk to your kids and your grandkids, they're not learning about the founding fathers being influenced by pastors or Christianity, but it's because we just aren't actually learning history anymore. If you go back, do you know the very first time the founding fathers got together was September 6, 1774. There was a painting done to depict the first time they got together. This was the painting done depicting their very first meeting. If you actually go back, you can go to the records of Congress. The very first meeting when Congress started the very first time, the opening motion was that I think we should start with prayer. And they finally agreed. They asked the man in the middle behind the pulpit, the Reverend Jacob Duché. He came and led them in prayer. And the records of Congress show that the prayer, the opening prayer, lasted for 2 hours. I don't know how spiritual you feel this morning, right? But you understand, if you showed up at church one morning, like you know you're going to be spiritual, and we're like, hey, 2-hour prayer meeting, that would wreck everybody's day. Right? Like, I mean, I love Jesus a lot, but you got to get in the mental headspace for a 2-hour prayer meeting, right? The interesting thing about this is in the records of Congress, and actually even from letters of the guys who were there, they talked about in the midst of the prayer, somebody came up with the idea, hey, maybe we should open the Bible. We should read some of the Bible as well. And they went to what was called the Book of Common Prayer. It was written back in the 1600s, and it outlined different chapters that you would read every day. It was kind of like a Bible reading plan, that on this day it's 4 chapters, this day it's these 4 chapters, and you go through the whole Bible in a year. Well, that day, they opened the Book of Common Prayer, they began reading these chapters, and John Adams wrote Abigail. And he said, one of the chapters we read this morning was accidentally extremely applicable to our situation. Meaning, right, that they weren't looking for the verse most relevant for them in their emotional state. They're just reading the Bible, and he's like, God spoke straight to us out of this. Now, a little context. They heard the night before that the British had actually surrounded Boston. There was a siege of Boston. British are now cannonading, firing on Boston. So the British are attacking their own citizens because we haven't separated yet. And the founding fathers hear about this, and they're going, what are we going to do? Our own nation is now attacking our own people. And in the midst of, and it actually makes more sense possibly now why they're like, we should open with prayer. Like, we're really going to need God's help in this. And then in the midst of praying, they're reading, and they read this one chapter. Well, the chapter they read was Psalm 35. Psalm 35 is one of the many psalms that King David writes when King Saul is chasing him, trying to kill him, where David says, God, I've done nothing, and they seek my harm. They seek my destruction. They want to kill me. Lord, you rise up. You be my shield, my buckler. You be my strong right arm, my defender. On David goes through Psalm 35. Well, this is what John Adams tells Abigail, that this was accidentally extremely applicable because we were like, we're David right now. He tells her in the letter, he says, I must beg you to read that psalm, read the 35th psalm to your friends, read it to your father, meaning we want everybody to see what we saw, what so encouraged and inspired us. Well, then he writes her another letter, and he tells her what Congress did. He said, we've appointed a continental fast. One of the early, very first actions of Congress was to call for a national day of prayer and fasting. Now, this is, again, from the founding fathers. And actually, John Adams tells Abigail, he said, the result of this, millions be upon their knees at once before their great creator, imploring his forgiveness and blessings, his smiles on American council and arms. There's only about 3 million colonists in the nation at that time. And John Adams says, millions are upon their knees. His assumption is that everybody's going to pray. I think it's probably a naive overstatement of the reality, right? Like, probably not every American prayed, but this is his sentiment that we're all going to join in because we recognize we got to have God's help in this. What's so fun is as you track the letters of John and Abigail back and forth, you see so many examples of some of these ideas, but even the idea of having a prayer proclamation. By 1815, there were more than 1,400 official government prayer proclamations done by governors, done by presidents, done by Congress. And this is one of the single things I like to point to the most. Whenever someone says, yeah, but the founding fathers, they weren't really religious, or we had a separation of church and state, or whatever the argument is of secularization in America, I would point back to this and I would just ask, if the founding fathers weren't religious, or maybe people argue they were atheists, agnostics, deists, okay, then why did they pray all the time? Because you understand, atheists don't believe in God. Agnostics aren't sure God exists, and deists don't think that God gets involved in the affairs of men. So if they were any of those, they're not doing prayer proclamations. And yet, this is exactly what the founding fathers did. Every single founding father who became a governor did prayer proclamations, every single one, without exception. This is the reality of who they were. They knew they needed God's help. Let me back you up. So this very first one from Congress, there's 15 during the American Revolution. They would alternate between prayer and fasting and then between prayer and thanksgiving. And this is actually maybe kind of self-explanatory, because if you need God's help, what do? You pray and you fast. But if God moves on your behalf and you recognize God has done something, what should you do? You should go back and thank God for what he did, for intervening on your behalf. So then they would do a day of prayer and thanksgiving. This is what happened to the revolution. The very first call to prayer was for prayer and fasting. And this is where tracking some of the letters between John and Abigail Adams becomes really fascinating, because it gives such a solid explanation of what they saw in the movement of we prayed and look at what God did, and then this happened and God's moving. So for example, there's a letter from John to Abigail where he tells her, and this is right after this first prayer proclamation, he said, it's amazing what's happened. He said, and he goes through the list of several things. He says that this colonel was able to defend this fort, and this man was able to hold the British off on this skirmish. And then he gets into the fact that he said, we've just destroyed a 20-gun British man of war ship and a 64-gun British man of war ship. Now, those are British naval vessels. Remember, Great Britain's the number one military power in the world at the time. Specifically, they have the number one Navy in the world, which makes them the number one military force at the time, because the Navy is where so much work was done. We, as a brand new nation, don't have a Navy. Okay? So this is remarkable. He says, we've just destroyed these two British naval war vessels that had 20 cannons and 64 cannons. And then if you start to break it down, it's interesting that there, of the founding fathers, there were many of them who were businessmen. And as businessmen, they did have ships they would use in their business, but they weren't war vessels. So what they would do is they would take whatever ships they had, they would take whatever cannons they could find, they would put the cannons on their ships, and they would try to use them to fight back. If you ever go to Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian Museum of American History, up on the third floor, has one of the very first ships of the American Navy. It's called the Gunboat Philadelphia. This is where it all started. Okay? Now, why does this matter? First of all, that looks kind of like a rowboat, right? And I'm not sure how intimidating a rowboat is with a couple cannons sticking out of it. John Adams says, we just destroyed a 20-gun British man of war ship and a 64-gun British man of war ship. So naval vessels with 20 cannons and 64 cannons, and we had ships with 3, 4, and 5 cannons, and we're winning. Like, he's like, this is crazy. Well, right, this is what they recognized. They begin to see things that did not make sense to them, and this is where they knew God must be working in our behalf. Now, to go a little further in this, John Adams, shortly after, writes Abigail another letter. He says, I was in a tavern eating dinner tonight, and there were men at a table eating dinner behind me, and they were discussing some of these unlikely things we've seen, and they were asking the question, how could we explain all of these unlikely things? He says, their conclusion was, I think, probably the best, most profound answer I've heard on this. And this is what he wrote Abigail, that this was a conclusion the men had come to. He said, it appears to me the eternal Son of God is operating powerfully against the British nation. How do you explain rowboats defeating naval war vessels? Jesus. Right? Like, this is their conclusion. But let me point out, this is not the conclusion of people who were trying to secularize the nation. This was not the conclusion of people saying we need a separation of church and state. No, this were people who understood without God's help, we would never succeed. And that's why they knew where to give credit when they begin to see these unlikely things happen, okay? This letter was in 1777. Now, 1777, this is early in the Revolution, and really, we really haven't won hardly anything yet. I mean, you do have the Battle of Saratoga that we win in 1777, but I mean, really, they've won virtually nothing to the point when he's writing this letter, and yet they're already seeing God move. How? Let me walk you back. I want to walk you through a few stories where if we just knew history, it would be so obvious that God was moving on behalf of the birth of this nation. If you go to the Battle of Long Island as an example, also known as the Battle of Brooklyn Heights, this is less than 2 months after we do the Declaration. Washington had 16,000 troops that were part of the Continental Army, and he doesn't know where the British are going to show up. He knows they're on the way. They're on all these ships, so he divides his army. 9,000 in one location, 7,000 in another location. When the British show up in New York, they have more than 30,000 troops they unload from the ships. And as all of these British troops are there, Washington isn't the location where they were. Washington had 9,000 men, and Washington is part of these 9,000 men. Well, the British troops push Washington's men back. They go to the edge of the river. They get stuck at the edge of the river. And when they get to the edge of the river, they have nowhere to go. And kind of old historic context, the river was a mile wide at that point. But at this point in American history, almost nobody knows how to swim, right? So you come up to water and you're just stuck, okay? This is their reality. To make matters worse, as they are waiting to see how this is going to unfold, and also keep in mind, this isn't the day when everybody's using muskets, okay? That's a single shot. Takes you 30 seconds to a minute to reload. They're not very accurate, so numbers make a really big difference. Sometimes we mistakenly look back at history through the modern lens, and right now, we have the greatest military in the world in America right now, and so we're used to winning, right? We're used to thinking, well, we might have had fewer, but we were better. Not back then, right? Like, really not. We were trying to figure out how this thing worked. Well, as they're pinned against the edge of the river, to make matters worse, the British Navy begins sailing up the river behind them. And Washington realizes, right, if the Navy comes up, they're going to be bottled in, and then whether they're caught in a crossfire, whatever's going to happen, they're going to be captured, and likely many of them are going to be killed. Washington, for sure, he's going to be hung for treason. Like, this is not going to be a good scenario. And then one of the first unlikely event happens. As the British Navy is sailing up the river behind them, out of nowhere, a massive storm rolls in. And the storm is so bad that the British naval fleet is recalled because they're afraid, right? The ships are going to run aground on the rocks. They're going to crash, and they're going to lose the Navy. So they call the fleet back. Washington realizes that if that fleet makes it behind them, there can be no escape. So he sends word out. He says, you have to find anything that floats. We have to get off this island tonight. Well, as evening comes, this could be one of the second divine intervention things they saw was the storm calmed. Now, it's a big deal because if the storm is still raging, it's going to be hard for them to get off. The storm calms. Washington says, find whatever you can. Well, they find some canoes. They find some flat bottom boats, some John boats. It's a mile across. They got 9,000 men. How many people you putting on a canoe at a time, right? And you got to get across and come back. This is going to be hard evacuation, but they begin the evacuation. And all night, they're going across or coming back. They're going across or coming back. As morning comes, Washington is still there with 1,000 men. The reason Washington is there is early on, he says, I am going to be the last one off the island. I am not going to abandon my men. You can imagine there were probably conversations where his men were saying, sir, we can sacrifice some privates, right? We can't lose the general. We're going to need you. He says, no. That's not the kind of leader I am. I'm going to stay. I'm going to make sure the men are okay. So he's going to be the last one off the island. Well, there's more than 1,000 troops, and the first light of dawn is appearing off in the distance. And they realize as soon as light comes, the British are going to see what's happening. They're going to advance. And then now it's 30,000 to 1,000. We for sure are going to be captured and killed. But before the light of dawn appears, another miraculous thing occurs. A fog rolls in off the river. And it sets up between the British camp and the American camp. In fact, one of the guys who was there, Major Benjamin Talmadge, he became the head of the Culper Spy Ring, one of the more famous spy rings in the American Revolution. He explained it, and there were many people that wrote about this that were there, but here's the way he explained it. He said, a very dense fog began to rise, and it seemed to settle in a peculiar manner over both encampments. I recollect this peculiar providential occurrence perfectly well, and so very dense was the atmosphere that I could scarcely discern a man at 6 yards distance. So from me to the front row, he's like, I couldn't even see anything, right? Total. I don't know how well you remember the story of Exodus, right? Moses, Israelites, Red Sea, Pharaoh's army, God divides them. This is the American version, right? The fog stays there. Washington continues the evacuation. The last 3 ships get loaded. Washington is on one of the last 3 ships. They push out in the river. When they get to the middle of the river, the fog begins to lift. As the fog begins to lift, the British realize the camp is empty. The British rush the camp. The British report they got to the edge of the river in time to see 3 ships arrive on the other side and to see them unload. Now, who's in the last ship? Washington. They literally watched George Washington get off the last ship as the fog is lifted. And this is where Americans looked at the story and they went, that's unusual, right? Like, what are the odds that it's a clear day, British fleet sails in, and I don't know where the storm comes. And then the storm calms in the evening. We start loading ships, and we're not going to make it in time, and the fog comes in, and the fog stays. But as soon as we get across, the fog lifts like, that's a lot of coincidences happening, right? they begin to recognize this was unusual. Now, had this been the only unusual occurrence, you might have explained it away. Except these kind of things happen time and time. And I can go through dozens of examples in the revolution of these kind of moments. I won't this morning, but I could go through dozens. And the reality is the people begin to recognize that there's too many unusual things. God had to be moving on their behalf. And let me also point out, up to this point, God wasn't giving them victory. God was just keeping them alive to fight another day. Okay? So this ultimately they got the victory, right? But that's not where they are yet. Now, to walk you through this, if you go to December of that year, just again, give you some perspective. All they've done is lose, and yet God's kept them alive. Now, to give a little perspective as well, we talked about that they lose the Battle of Long Island, then they lose the Battle of Kips Bay, they lost the Battle of White Plains, they lost the Battle of Fort Washington, they lost the Battle of Fort Lee, they lose all of New York. So all they've done is lose. And why this is even worse of a problem sometimes than we realize is because back then they had one-year enlistments. You sign up in January and the enlistment's up in December. And maybe you show up late. So you're there right in March, April, May, but enlistments are up in December. And if you have been on a team that all you've done is lose all year long, right? And someone's like, guys, round 2, let's sign up again. You're probably not getting a lot of signups. Well, this was Washington's dilemma, right? Because Washington recognizes that nobody is excited about what's happened because we've kept people away from their families, right? We've kept the men away from their wife, from their children, away from their farms. And it's December. So now Washington has an issue that people are going, you know what? I might as well go home. We're not doing anything more. I've been away from my wife and kids too long. Washington's having a hard time keeping them together, and Washington can't get anybody to sign up for round 2. So Washington says, okay, we have to change the story, change the narrative, change perspective. What we need is a victory. So Washington begins navigating, what can we do to give a victory? And he looks at one of the local British forts and says, we need to capture a British fort. We need to give our men a victory so they can look and go, hey, there's a chance, right? We got to win. Go team us. And Washington says, okay, then our strategy, comes with this plan. He says, our strategy is on Christmas night, right? This is when they're going to cross the Delaware, go on Fort Trenton. But he says, on Christmas night, we're going to march on Trenton. Now, that would be a major challenge for a lot of Americans to think about on Christmas night doing this, but it's worth noting historically. Christmas night back then is not like it is now. Because in early America, there was not a single colony that celebrated Christmas, and Christmas was actually illegal in almost every colony up until about the Civil War is when Christmas became legal and became a normal holiday or a normalized holiday in America. Why? Because almost every single colony was founded by very pious, devout, religious individuals and organizations, groups, right? Whether it's the Quakers in Pennsylvania with William Penn, you have the Puritans, the Pilgrims, right? You start going through who settled America, very devout religious people. Well, one of the things they had acknowledged is in Europe, there was so much secularization happening, and they pointed to holidays like Christmas that had been so commercialized, there was almost no religious value left in what they did. And they said, we're not going to do these secular holidays where there's no religious value because we're going to be Christians and we're going to celebrate the Bible and God and Jesus. I'm just kind of interesting. They were concerned about commercialization back then, right? If they had any idea, right, they'd be kind of shocked today. But what was very well known is over in Europe, there was a lot of celebrating on these holidays. And in Trenton was being controlled by the Hessians. Hessians were Germans, but they were German mercenaries. They were hired by the British. There's about 1,300 of them at Fort Trenton. And Washington knew, right? The Germans were known for being able to party a little bit, and they were known as being drinkers. So Washington's idea actually is very sound. If you know there's a group of guys, and they're about to hit their drink pretty hard, let's go the next morning when they got hangovers, maybe they're passed out. That's a pretty good strategy, right? I'll give you credit for that one. Well, this is his idea. We're going to march on Trenton on Christmas night, be there the next morning, and as the plan begins to unfold, Washington's initial idea, there was going to be 4 different troops, 4 different armies. 3 of them were going to be on his side. They're going to cross the Delaware, 3 different locations. 1 is already over. They're going to come down. And so they're going to completely surround Trenton, and they're going to have such an overwhelming force volume that they're assured victory. What he did not factor in were the conditions. And as they go to cross the Delaware, right, when you're in New Jersey, when you're up in the New York area at Christmas time, they can have some pretty tough winters. Well, when they get to the river is impassable in nearly every location. Now, let me walk you through this a little bit to see. General Henry Knox, just as a side note, was the guy in charge of the crossing where Washington himself was. I'm going to come back to Henry Knox in a second because I'm going to read a portion of one of his letters at the very end. But what happens is they go to cross the Delaware. Initially, Washington's plan was 5,400 troops. They're going to take all their cannons and their horses. But as they get to the crossing, they're not able to cross in 3 locations. There's only one where they can get across, so 2 troops aren't able to make it across. So they only cross where Washington is. They only get 2,400 troops across, but even Washington's group is delayed so much by the ice flows, they don't get across until 4 a.m. They were supposed to get across at midnight. But now they're not across at 4 a.m. They're trying to be in position in the fort before the light of dawn. There's no way they're going to make it now, but this is the only chance they have, so they're going to march. And the march is nearly a 10-mile march to the fort. It's a little over 9 miles that they got to go to the fort. And as they're going to the fort, to make matters worse, a blizzard rolls in on them. Now, I say to make matters worse. They did not recognize it in the moment, although afterwards they certainly talked about it. As they're marching to the fort, a blizzard rolls in. In fact, the blizzard was so bad that 2 men actually froze to death during that march. And one of the things, there was actually an officer who was there who said that we actually were leaving such a trail in the snow, not just from the amount of men, but from the bloody footprints of the men who had already worn through their boots and had nothing to wrap their feet with. Okay, so you have Americans, all 13 colonies who've come, they're not prepared for winter. They don't have their winter gear, their winter coats. They're not ready for all of this. And yet, as they march on the fort, they're going, the blizzard caused the sentries on duty to go to their commanding officer and say, sir, right, it's really cold. Can we come in and stay warm by the fire? The officer agreed, said, yeah, nobody's crazy enough to be out marching in this kind of weather. So they're not going to make it in time before dawn. But now there's no guards on duty because of the storm. So they show up, no guards on duty, they get in position, and as they get in position, the storm breaks. Interesting, right? Well, so they announce themselves, it's a complete surprise, and as the battle begins, the battle only lasts for 35 minutes. The Hessians are inside a fort in an entrenched position, and it's over in 35 minutes? How? Right? Well, let's go a little further because the Hessians are fighting on the British side. Well, if you look at what happened to the Hessians, in the midst of this 35-minute battle, there were approximately 20 killed, about 100 wounded, and about 1,000 that were captured. On the American side, there were 3 wounded. Period. That's all. And this, again, is where people begin to look and go, that's odd, right? Like, what are the chances that we don't make it in time and then we're marching and the storm blows in, but the storm causes the guards to go in and the storm's there, we get there and the storm calms and then we announce ourselves and we have this overwhelming victory. Like, this is just unusual. Well, what also makes it unusual is of the 3 people that were wounded, one of the stories that became pretty well known is that as they were marching, there was a small detachment that went out ahead of Washington's army. They were going to kind of guard a road that was going out of a small town, make sure nobody escaped. They walked by a small house, and a dog began barking, and a man came to the door. The man had a musket. Hey, what are you guys doing? And the soldier said, sir, we mean you no harm. Stay inside. We're the American Army. We're marching on Trenton. He says, whoa, I'm Team American Army. If you're marching on Trenton, he says, I want to come. His name was Dr. John Riker. He says, I'm a doctor, and some poor fellow may need my assistance. So he joins them. Medical kit comes with them. This small detachment, when they get back with Washington's army, as the battle ensues, opening volley. This guy, young officer, talks to the doctor, tells the doctor he can come. Doctor's beside him. Young guy gets shot in the shoulder. Bullet bounces in, nicks an artery. This is a fatal wound. This guy could die, except the doctor's right beside him. The records say the doctor came over, and not to give too much details, but maybe it's because I'm a guy. I don't know. Moms, you can appreciate, right? You've dealt with stuff. It's fine, right? But the doctor comes over, and he's like, takes his finger, puts his finger in the bullet hole to try to slow down the bleed. He ends up saving this guy's life. Well, who was the guy he saved? This young officer. The young officer became a very famous American. He actually is the guy standing behind George Washington in the famous crossing of the Delaware. And that's actually a known individual, known name, right? We know who that is. He ended up becoming the 5th president of the United States. His name was James Monroe. okay? James Monroe should have died and bled to death, except the one dog that barked happened to belong to a doctor who said he wants to come and happens to be standing beside the one guy who's fatally shot, and the doctor's able to put his finger like, what are the odds? This is what people recognize. And so Washington talked about this, how God's providence was on them and what they did in the victory. But one of the guys who was there, General Henry Knox, he wrote a letter about this victory. And what he said in his letter, the hurry, fright, and confusion of the enemy was not unlike that which will be when the last trump will sound. The Apostle Paul talked about the return of Christ, right? The trump sounds, and it's just chaotic and crazy. He's like, that's how it felt, right? It was just, they didn't know what was going on. It was crazy. But he concluded, Providence seemed to have smiled upon every part of this enterprise. The conclusion was God moved on our behalf. In fact, if you go to George Washington, just a little over a year later, George Washington, 1778, wrote General Thomas Nelson Jr. a letter. And this is still, we're early in the Revolution, comparatively speaking. Washington talks about how God had moved so much on their behalf. What Washington tells them, he says, the hand of providence has been so conspicuous in all this, and he must be worse than an infidel who lacks faith, and more than wicked that has not gratitude enough to acknowledge his obligations. What does it mean? God's hand has been so obvious. If people look and can't see that God's been moving on our behalf, they have to be worse than a non-believer, or they have to be wicked. If they can't acknowledge what God's done, well, then he continued in his letter. He said, but it will be time enough for me to turn preacher when my present appointment ceases, and therefore I shall add no more on the doctrine of providence. George Washington was like, I've seen enough miracles, I could become a pastor, right? He says, but I'm going to focus on the present situation. I'm going to try to win the war right now. This is what was so evident. In fact, I can go through dozens of stories. It was so obvious God was moving. Well, let me take you to the end, the conclusion. When the revolution finishes, the peace treaty of Parus is signed by these guys. On the left is John Jay, the middle is John Adams, on the right is Benjamin Franklin. This is the peace treaty of Parus. This is the document that ended the American Revolution, brought peace between us and Great Britain, and made America a free, independent nation. Look at the title of this document. In the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity. Do you know America became a nation in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit? Okay, why does it matter? John Adams says to Jefferson, right, years later, he's like, the way we achieved independence, it was the principles of Christianity. Today, people have no idea. The reason America's been the most free, stable, prosperous nation in the history of the world has been because of the influence of the Bible and Christianity. That they don't know. And our kids today are learning, nope, we don't need God, separation of church and state, and they're embracing this socialist, Marxist, communist Kool-Aid, right? They're drinking it because they don't know they're being lied to. What I want to encourage is we have to go back and restore that foundation. In fact, if you want to know more, we have a website, wallbuilders.com. We have all these stories documented, footnoted, way more. In fact, we even have a brand new book, The American Story of the Beginnings, that we go through a lot of these stories, examples. We have more than 1,000 footnotes in the back because we tell people, please don't take our word for it. Go read this for yourself. The history is there, and the history affirms. What made this nation so special was the influence of Christianity in the Bible. If we are ever going to be a strong nation again, it's going to be because we restore the influence of Christianity in the Bible, and that only happens when the mama bears of America wake up, right? And make sure that in schools, we stop teaching pornography and start teaching the Bible. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Be fought for and passed on to the next generation. But today, radical leftists threaten to extinguish America's greatness. Who will stand and fight? Since 1979, Leadership Institute has identified, trained, and placed conservative leaders for America, in public policy, politics, the media, government, and beyond. Leadership Institute equips conservatives of all walks of life to run for office and defeat leftists at the ballot box. From state capitals to school boards, all the way to Washington. Many conservative leaders in Congress got their start at a Leadership Institute training.
I was in a Leadership Institute class that came to Naples, Florida. So I've been where you are.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Help Leadership Institute raise leaders for America to stop the radical left. Join us today.
Returning to moderate the panel on gender confusion is our Vice President, Debbie Kraulidis.
Hello, everyone, again. How we doing? Good. All righty. How about all this information? What are we going to do with all this stuff? We got to just change our world, don't we? Boy, Tim, great job, Tim Barton. And that's just all off the top of his head. I'm like, he kills me. So good. All righty. Well, I am going to go ahead and introduce some folks here. This is a panel that we actually did in Washington, D.C. I don't know how many months ago it was, but it was so popular, we said we had to discuss this at our 20th anniversary. It's a top issue with our parents right now. So this is the Gender Confusion Panel. Let's welcome January Littlejohn, Mark Trammell, and Laura Smalt to the stage. These are our panelists. Thank you. Come on out. Thank you. Well, like I was just telling everybody here, we all had a great conversation about a tough subject in Washington, D.C. a couple of months ago with Epic Times. And this is really such an important issue because parents are dealing with this. You're going to hear from all three of these incredible people stories that are very personal. They happened with them, or they work in an industry that is helping parents. So first I want to tell you about January Littlejohn right here. She's my new favorite friend too. I love her, January. She's a wife and a mom of 3. She has a master's degree in counseling and is a licensed mental health counselor. Her 13-year-old daughter was socially transitioned without her knowledge or consent. So we're going to hear about that. And let me tell you about Mark. Mark Trammell serves as the executive director and general counsel to the Center for American Liberty, who is leading the fight against the assaults on parental rights. So we're going to talk about the legal aspect of this as well. We're going to hear from a mama with her daughter. We're going to hear from an attorney. And then we're also going to hear from Laura Smalt. I love Laura, too. Thank you, Laura, for coming. She said, Deb, of course I'm going to come. So did January, so did Mark. So Laura Smalt is a former transgender for almost 9 years. She underwent years of cross-sex hormone therapy, 2 major gender-affirming surgeries, and all of the legal changes. Her story, and I say this truly, is an amazing testimony of restoration and hope. So that is Laura. All right, well, we're going to get into this here. I'm going to have everybody first, I'd love to just talk about, kind of get everybody to know their stories a little bit. I told you a little bit about January, but January, get us up to date. What happened with your daughter? She came home one day and basically said, hey, Mom, in passing, I'm trans, or I'm transitioning, or I want to be this, I've got a gender issue. And you knew there were some issues with her, but you didn't know it was progressing as quickly as it was. Now, again, January has a background as a professional counselor. So this is something that can happen right in our home and right under our own roof. Tell us what happened.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me today. So at the height of COVID in 2020, our 13-year-old daughter came to us and told us she no longer felt like a girl. And this was shortly after 3 other friends at her middle school had also started identifying as transgender. And transgender today no longer has a coherent meaning. It does not mean that they identify as the opposite sex anymore. There are about 72 gender identities, if you choose to Google them, that kids are being lied to about, and these identities are being marketed directly to them. Yeah. So at the time, my daughter was identifying as gender fluid, which then morphed into non-binary. But what you have to understand is her identity changed 4 times over 2 years. So as my husband and I were struggling to understand this, because this was really in the infancy of this movement of parents standing up and fighting back. And so I was unaware of how gender ideology, which is this lie that kids are being taught, that you choose your gender identity, that you can choose to be a boy, a girl, neither or both, is being, pushed and infiltrated in public schools all over our country. Mm-hmm. And so for the sake of time, my daughter got into the car. And just so you're aware, I was volunteer of the year at this middle school.
Right. You were a very engaged mom.
Very engaged, highly involved. I ran their Red, White, and Blue Veterans Day. So they knew who I was. I was even a substitute teacher in this district. And my daughter got into the car and said, Mom, I had a meeting today about my name because I thought they would treat it as a nickname. And she said, but they asked me which restroom I wanted to use. So immediately I panicked. I contacted the guidance counselor and I said, I would like to know why and how you had a meeting with my 13-year-old daughter without my knowledge or consent. And weeks went by with communication because they initially told me we cannot give you any information about the meeting we had with your daughter. She's now protected by a non-discrimination law.
A 13-year-old daughter
yeah.
cannot be discussed
That was a lie.
with the parent, right?
But we finally got a meeting with the principal and we were shown the transgender support plan that they completed with our 13-year-old child behind closed doors with 3 adults. And the 3 adults were the assistant principal, a guidance counselor, and a social worker I had never met. And in this 6-page plan that they did with my daughter, they asked her questions that would have absolutely impacted her safety. This was not about just calling her a different name or calling her made-up pronouns. They asked her which restroom and locker room she preferred to use, which sex she preferred to room with on overnight field trips. And then in this same plan, which are used all over our country in schools, they asked her, how should we refer to you when we're speaking to your parents? Should we use your birth name and pronouns or your new name? And this is to effectively deceive parents that these social transitions have ever happened.
Right.
So we ended up a year and a half later trying to resolve this issue with the district. We filed a federal lawsuit against the school district for violation of parental rights. My daughter is 17 now, so these things take a long time, as Mark will attest to, but she is completely free of any kind of sexual identity confusion.
Thank you, Lord.
And that is what I do full time now, is I help parents walk their children through this confusion and just know the truth that they were made in God's image.
Yeah. Thank you, January. So, I mean, we can only give you a taste of all their testimonies and their stories, and we're going to get on to some of the resources that all of them have available for us. So, thank you. And this is the power of moms. We don't say no.
Amen.
We don't let them take our kids. We don't let the schools raise them. We say, no, I'm sorry. These are my children, not yours. So I'm going to go to Laura real quick. Laura, you were older. You weren't a child that transitioned, although I know you had some personal kind of issues in your family. You transitioned, then you detransitioned, all to God's glory. Tell them a little bit about your journey, because I know that people are older, younger. I mean, we saw most people that would transition. We usually were older. Now we see it with the kids. But there is still a crisis, gender crisis across the country in all age groups. Share your story a little bit for us.
Yeah, there were a lot of things I could point to in early childhood and people that I blamed and ways I was hurt. But the reality is I just developed this deep sense of self-hatred. I hated who I was, and I felt like I had no worth or value as a woman. And I didn't realize it at the time, but so much of it was because I was in so much sexual sin, and I was giving myself away to any man that wanted it. And so I just began to feel like I had no worth, and I didn't know who I was, began to lose my identity. And I began to think back on all these childhood thoughts of being jealous of my brother and wishing I was a boy, fitting in more with the boys. And I began to think, the reason that this never works out, the reason I'm never happy in these relationships is because I was supposed to be the man. If I was the man, I know how to treat a woman. And so I began to fantasize a lot through pornography, and a lot of people don't realize the impact that porn had on my life of living this fantasy over and over and just driving that in my mind. And at the time, I had never even heard the word transgender. This is in 2007. That's how much this has changed since 2007.
It's progressed,
Absolutely.
It's so aggressive.
Yeah. And so I found it on Google just by looking up girl becoming a boy, just to see, has anyone ever had this thought? I was shocked when there were all these results. Found a support group, and within 5 minutes of going to the support group, they said, oh, you are definitely transgender. Right. It's like, I knew it. I knew this was me. And I was worried I would never look like a man. They said, oh, don't worry about it. After a year or so of hormones, no one will ever know you were a girl. And that's really that was that hook for me, because I didn't want to be who I was. I was trying to reinvent myself. It's the same life from the Garden of Eden, you shall be as God, to call myself creator. And but I discovered, as no matter what I changed about the outside, as I took all these hormones and I had these surgeries, I had all these legal changes, had so many people around me affirming me, and I had a job where I was only known as male. I had a partner who called me, he was actually a male to female transgender, and he called me his husband. But in all of this, I realized that nothing was fixing the dysphoria inside. I began to realize this wasn't real. And I remember thinking, this is still so fake, no matter what I've done to my body. This is still not real. And I was so angry, I became very suicidal and just really didn't have any hope of life. But the Lord had been pursuing me. And I had a praying mama
Amen.
and other people. And they began to... And they began to tell a lot of other people in the church and began to get people praying for me. And the Lord just drew me out of that life. I can't explain it other than the Lord just pursued me. He began to transform my heart. And I got radically saved at one point. And I was going to be a man of God. But the Lord pursued me.
Amen.
And he didn't leave me there. And so God just has I finally walked away from it all, really just to obey the Lord. But as I did, God just began to heal me and transform me. He'd been peeling off the layers of all the pain and all the trauma. And just as I began to forgive those that had hurt me, as I began to repent of my own sin, and the desire to be the other gender just faded away. Mm-hmm. And I began to find myself getting more and more free, and then began to desire a husband. And God, in his great mercy, brought me an incredible husband. I was married just about 2 years ago.
Isn't that wonderful? I get choked up, you know. I'm like, and when I talked to Laura and I invited her for the first one, she said, "Well, listen, I've got to say something on the front end. I give all the glory to Jesus, because this is not something that anyone can do personally. This is a transformation, and it's very true. A lot of the young people or the older people, whatever it is, they're dealing with intense issues. This is not a gender issue. This is either a spectrum issue, a self-confidence issue. There are issues, and everybody just thinks all of a sudden it's a gender issue and it fixes it, and we know it doesn't. Let's go to great testimony, Laura. Let's talk about Mark and what his organization does. And you are out there regularly. You're defending parents that need help. There's many parents that are watching, live streaming in the audience here that are looking for help. And then there's also those that have been transitioned themselves as a child, like Chloe or all these. Tell us a little bit about what you are seeing now. I'm sure this was not something 10 years ago you were dealing with, and now it's just on the front of your organization.
That's right. 10 years ago, I definitely had no idea that this would be so much of my practice today. In fact, 4 years ago, right around this time, we started filing lawsuits challenging COVID shutdowns. I'm, in my heart, a First Amendment lawyer. I love advocating for religious freedom, for free speech, the right of association. And during COVID, I really thought that those lockdown orders shutting down our houses of worship were the most significant civil liberties issue of our day, of my lifetime. And at the time, I was right. But it wouldn't be for my entire lifetime. And here we are 4 years later, and this parental rights crisis is before us. This human rights crisis of young girls being allowed to be young girls. And so our organization, the Center for American Liberty, we represent parents whose kids have been secretly, socially transitioned in schools. One of our clients, Jessica Conan. Jessica is a single mom in Salinas, California, who, goodness, she went to the school board meeting after hearing what was going on. Mm-hmm. Her daughter was in the 6th grade when teachers invited her to join this equality club. And in this equality club, her daughter...
Watch out for these clubs.
Well, and what's interesting is this is the only club that meets during the school day. Yeah. So all of the other extracurriculars require, they're after school, they would require parents to come pick up their child.
Yeah, that's true.
And then because parents would have to pick up their kids after school, then parents know about it. Mm-hmm. But if it's during lunch or during recess, parents don't know about it. They're not taking roll of who's there. And so during this time, her daughter was convinced to identify as first as bisexual and then as transgender as a 6th grader.
I've heard these. I've had so many moms on talking exactly about this.
Yeah.
And then they're fearful that their kids are going to get taken away, that DCFS is going to show up at their door, or they get the old line.
And they did.
Right, and they did.
They did. For Jessica, she was called into the principal's office and told your daughter's now a boy. These are his names, his pronouns, and you need to get on board. Shortly thereafter, social services shows up at her door asking both of her kids, do you still want to live with your mom? So we filed a lawsuit, and the result of that lawsuit was a $100,000 settlement benefiting Jessica and her daughter, Alicia. But that's one case. These are happening all across the country. In May, we'll be arguing at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, trying to have a court declare unconstitutional these parental secrecy policies because they violate parents' right, their fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children.
Yeah.
You know, you also mentioned Chloe Cole.
Right.
We're representing young women who have been transitioned surgically as minors.
Without their consent.
They had no capacity to give consent at 13. Layla Jane is one of our clients. She had a double mastectomy at 13 years old.
It's horrible.
13 years old. So this is really a new area of medical negligence is not new, but medical negligence in this area of medicine is very new.
Yeah.
And so it's very time consuming. We've been litigating these cases for about a year. We have another probably year and a half of litigation ahead of us.
Wow.
But what I would just like for your audience to know is that there is a recourse. And what I love about all of these stories is how parents are standing up, moms are standing up,
That's right.
and they're fighting back. And when one of them does it, it's contagious.
It is. It is.
And then it creates a
Courage is
movement.
contagious,
And it's
yeah.
awesome to see.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Mark, for what your organization is doing. Thank you so much. And this is, I was telling them backstage, the two things right now that everyone comes to Moms for America is, it's always been education, for sure, because that's so important to our moms, but it's gender confusion. That's why we did our gender confusion booklet, which is available today at our booth. It's also available on our website. It connects us to all of these resources, and it's parental rights. Parents know that they are raising their kids, and when these teachers and these schools and these psychiatrists or doctors come in and they start rearranging our kids and taking advantage of them, and we've got people on our staff that their kids are dealing with this, and this is a huge issue. So January, what are some of the resources that you have developed? January speaks all across the country, and you go around with this sign, right? What does the sign say?
Detransition Awareness Day.
So she takes pictures with everyone with this and just heightening the awareness. So what are some of the resources you have for our moms?
So through an organization that I volunteer for, Do No Harm, so it's donoharmmedicine.org, there is a parent resource page if you look under Protecting Minors from Gender Ideology. So those are great resources. Separately, because Do No Harm is apolitical and non-religious, I have Christian resources available that I have put together for parents of all ages, because I understand now that we have got to be inoculating these kids from this insidious ideology, because what parents and grandparents need to understand, even if you homeschool or have your child in a private school, it's not a matter of if they're exposed, it's when.
Right. And how early, how young.
How young. We should not be putting internet or smartphones in the hands of these children under the age of 16. No child should have social media at all. And so my call to action is really to be inoculating them, because if you wait until your child is infected with this ideology, it is a hellish path to walk through it. But I am a testament that you can. Yeah. And so that is what I do now. But it takes radical steps to walk children through. And so one of the resources that we have separate from my role at Do No Harm is a church transgender response guide. And in your bags, you should have received one of these postcards with a QR code. Mm-hmm. In this guide, it is almost 100 pages long, and it's designed for pastors and parents. So it explains what gender ideology is so that you're armed with that information. It also goes through how to walk your child through this confusion. For pastors, it goes through church policies and legal issues that they have questions about, because that's really important. Sure. But it also has a chapter on CPS, Child Protective Services, because oftentimes parents do not know what to do when CPS shows up at their door. Mm-hmm. So this is a great guide for parents to understand what's going on and to really inoculate their children from this ideology, because we have got to put a protective factor on these children's brains. So when they hear the lie, they're exposed to the lie, they identify it for what it is. It is a lie.
It is. Amen. Mark, what do we do when Child Protective Services shows up at our door? What do we do when the principal says, you know, this is what you're going to do? How do we respond correctly and courageously and being bold and brave so you don't feel like you're being beat down and shoved in a corner and saying you don't care about your child? We'll see a little bit of a clip of a movie here that Epic Times did where they say, do you want a dead daughter or an alive son? I mean, this is really intimidating.
Yeah, my response would be twofold. First, question everything, right? Ask a lot of questions, get all the facts, get it in writing if you can, right? But the second thing is to lawyer up.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to. And this
what if it's finances? What if someone says, I don't have this?
Yeah.
What do you do?
So, I mean, our organization, we would love to come alongside you and help defend your parental rights. And we do so without charging you a dime. We have supporters who make that possible.
How about that?
So don't let finances get in the way of defending your legal rights and protecting your family.
Amen. Thank you. Laura, what would you say? What's your advice? Because you're coming it from very personal. And I think we sometimes we need to hear this from someone who's actually gone through it.
Yeah, never forget that the gospel's the answer, that Jesus Christ is really the one. He's the one that gives us our identity. He's our creator. In fact, the Lord specifically told me when I was crying out to the Lord, and the Lord said, you cannot claim to love me and yet reject my creation. And he said, let me tell you who you are. And so we can't forget, because I'm seeing thousands and thousands detransition, and they're so broken. They have no hope. They're so angry. So we've got to be presenting the gospel. My husband and I have just opened our own ministry. You can check us out at called Eden's Redemption, talking about how God is redeeming the curse that's on the earth, that we're under the curse, but that the Lord is bringing redemption to all of this. So check us out at edensredemption.org.
Wonderful.
Oh, can I give this
Yes,
website? I
go
forgot.
ahead.
So
Go
if
ahead,
you
sure.
did not get one of these, I have some available. Just find me. I'll be here all day, but it's childparentrights.org under resources. And if you are a parent struggling with this, I do have some of these guides with me, and I would be happy to give you one, because we have got to come together as Christians and as moms and support one another in this issue, because there is hope, just like Laura is saying, just like Mark is saying. There are people there to help you and help your child through this, but it's not easy.
I want to ask one other question, Mark. What is the legal ground that they feel that they can be so bold with this? What are they standing on? Because they're not standing on parental rights. They're not standing on the love of child. Right. They have nothing. They're not connected to this. What are they legally standing on?
Well, I think especially in the school setting, they're asserting that there is this right to privacy, that kids have a right to privacy from their parents. And in fact, something interesting.
What in the world?
Southern California, there's a school district that parents ran for school board. They won, and their first order of business was to pass a parental notification policy, flipping the script, right? Saying, look, we've registered our kids by this name in this school. If my child decides to come to the school and identify by something other than how we've registered the child, then you have to notify parents. This is common sense.
Right.
The Attorney General of California filed a lawsuit against the school board because, according to the state of California, children have a right to privacy from their parents. It's just crazy. I don't know how, there's no polite way to put it.
Right.
It's just crazy.
It is just crazy.
Yeah, it's an attack on the family, ultimately. It's an attack on the family and the child. This is not in the best interest of the child or the parent-child relationship.
Absolutely. We hear this all across the country. Divide the home. Get in between the parents. Divide that home. Make the parent be the enemy. The child is the victim. And then all of a sudden, they've got a whole house that is upside down. And this affects everyone, right? If you start start transitioning in your home, that affects the brothers, the sisters, right? That's one thing that you talk about too, right?
Yeah, this affected my whole family, and then you don't know what to do at holidays and other things, and it just created havoc in the whole family.
Yeah. It is a very tough issue. So we thank you again for coming. I mean, they're flew in from all across the country. Where are you from, January?
I live in Tallahassee, Florida.
So nice of her to come in from Tallahassee. And Mark, you flew in from?
I'm from Maryland. I flew in from Baltimore.
And then?
Oklahoma City.
So these are people from across the country coming in to share their story, their hope, what God can do, and what we're going to do together as Moms for America all across the country. No one is taking our kids. We're going to fight for their identity because God has made them in his image, male and female. Amen? Thank you, panel. Let me just mention this really quick. I'm going to throw to this video. And if you have not seen this movie from Epic Times, this was something that we did together regarding this movie coming out. I want to thank Epic Times for producing this incredible docudrama. We're going to show you a trailer for Gender Transformation, The Untold Realities. If you've not seen this, check it out with Epic Times. It is so informative. It is stories. January's in that one. I can't remember who else is in this video, but it's an amazing journey that you follow of one person and their family and the answers that are available. So watch this trailer. And again, check out Gender Confusion pamphlet that we have at our booth out there. We have this information for you. We're here to help you, moms. God bless.
Ashley Smith Thomas is the founder and CEO of Freedom's Fund USA, a nonprofit to protect freedom and national security. Please welcome Ashley Smith Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here today. I would like to start off with a funny story. I'm usually asked to speak about China and the threat that the CCP poses, the Chinese Communist Party, poses to our national security. And in 2021, I was invited to speak at the Texas Federation of Republican Women, their biannual convention in Austin. And of course, my topic was about China. Halfway through my speech, when I addressed how big tech is colluding with China, the power went out in the entire resort. It was supposed to take 5 minutes for the power to come back on. Instead, it took 30 minutes. And the president of TFRW at that time, Kit Whitehill, who led the Texas Pledge earlier this morning, provided me the opportunity to continue to speak. And when I walked back up on stage, I told the audience that it was China, 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 in which they erupted in cheers. So I share that story to say that lights should not be going out today, because I'm going to discuss another country that has been on the forefront of many minds. And so which country is that? It's Israel. I'm sure many of you all recall and witnessed footage of the horrific attack on Israel from Hamas when they stormed Israel there on October 7th, 2023, performing their terrorist acts. We all witnessed the footage of the barbaric atrocities of Hamas terrorizing the Jewish people, dragging women out of their homes into the streets, raping them, slaughtering babies, torturing toddlers. It was reported that 1,200 people were murdered that day, the largest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And let's not forget all the hostages that were also taken that day. President Biden says that he stands with Israel and that he's a friend of Prime Minister Netanyahu. But what has he done to stop Iran? Hamas and Hezbollah, which is based in Lebanon, are known proxies funded and paid for by Iran to commit acts of terrorism. And let's also not forget the current assault on our military from the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who are also funded and paid for by Iran as their proxy. It was horrific what was happening to Israel, and to respond to what Hamas did, Israel had and continues to have every right to defend itself. It's about time someone stood up to Hamas, because really, Israel is standing up to Iran. I don't know about you, but I'm a person of faith. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe in the word of God, in which God spoke to Abraham that he was going to give him land, Israel, and that from there he'd become the father of many nations. Scripture tells us in Genesis 12 that God told Abraham pertaining to Israel that whoever blesses you, I will bless. Whoever curses you, I will curse. I believe that God has not forgotten his promises, nor does he forget the covenants that he had made. We as a nation have blessed Israel, but I'm concerned that we're about to turn our back toward Israel due to political pressures and poll numbers. As it appears our back is beginning to turn, we have a border crisis right now that this current administration refuses to acknowledge, in which many MAMs, which is known as military-aged males, are crossing our border. It has been reported that many MAMs from the Middle East and China have entered the U.S. illegally by boat off the coast of California. Under President Trump's leadership, he was able to secure the border with the Remain in Mexico policy. He started to build the wall, and he was not afraid to deport bad actors. President Trump understood the importance that in order for a nation to survive, there must be the safety and security for economic, defensive, and destabilization purposes. What a difference an administration makes. Currently, the Biden administration refuses to secure the border. Ladies, I want to ask you, do you feel safer today than you did 5 years ago? No, I know I don't. And since the attack on Israel, our national security threat level is high. And the House Committee on Homeland Security, their annual worldwide threats hearing that occurred in October 2023, FBI Director Christopher Wray confirmed the national security threat posed by the growing number of gotaways at the southwest border, especially as America's enemies, including Iran-backed Hamas and Hezbollah, have been emboldened to spread their malign influence following their October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. Wray alluded to Chairman Green that the national security consequences of this crisis have turned every state into a border state. During the hearing, it was reported by CBP that 294 illegal aliens that were apprehended on the terrorist watch list. And yet the real concern is the 1.8 million gotaways. Border security is national security. I'm a firm believer in that. And right now, every American's life is at risk until Congress and this administration take seriously the need to secure our border. As an American, as a woman, as a soon-to-be mom, I am deeply concerned about the future of our nation and where we are headed. I share this information as the reality that is facing America, not to bring doom and gloom, but rather to empower you, because I truly do believe that our better days are ahead of us. Why? Because in the famous words of Ronald Reagan, he said, "Evil is powerless if the good are unafraid." It takes women like you and me to stand firm and push back against this evil. We must stand together in unity and strength and courage to use our voice and say enough is enough. I believe we are entering a time where the Esthers are arising, declaring the works of the Lord in the land of the living, and pleading with the Lord before him to protect our people, to protect our land from the wicked plots of the enemy. That is why I'm a firm believer that women have a role in politics and government. So I want to leave you with 4 action steps. So FREE, F-R-E-E, faith, research, educate, and empower. Faith. Ladies, let us continue to pray for our city, our state, and our nation. Research. Research issues globally and what is happening. Don't take my word for it. Draw your own conclusion. Educate. Educate friends and family as to what is going on. Share with them what is taking place. And lastly, empower. Empower one another to get involved, run for school board, run for Congress. Do what God has called you to do. Ladies, you are forging the future, forging the path ahead for future generations to come, and let your actions and what you do moving forward today be the groundwork for which future generations build upon. Just like Queen Esther having to go before the king to plead for her people, her cousin Mordecai encouraged her, yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Thank you all, and God bless.
Please welcome Vanessa Faura, the Executive Director of Moms for America Action.
Hello, everyone. Where's the energy? Moms? Gosh, you all look so beautiful out there. Thank you. Well, I am truly excited and honored to share a groundbreaking announcement with you today. I am proud to announce a significant partnership where Moms for America joins forces with the Foundation for the Restoration of America to promote an existing and valuable program called the Constitutional Study and Scholarship Program, designed to educate young adults on the rich history and founding principles of our nation that will now reach more young adults across the country. Yay! This initiative, it's not just about learning, it's about sparking a deep, enduring love for our country. This collaboration between Moms for America and the Foundation for the Restoration of America strengthens a shared goal of nurturing informed, engaged citizens who appreciate the privilege of being an American. Because as you all know, and I do as well, being American is a privilege. It's a beacon of hope for fostering a generation that values, preserves, and champions the ideals that make America truly great. As we look forward to learning more about this great program and the partnership, let's reflect on how education can unite us and inspire a lifelong love for our country. Now it is with a great pleasure that I introduce my colleague and Executive Director for the Foundation for the Foundation for the Restoration of America, Christine Altenberger. But before that, we're going to watch a very short video. Thank you all.
The Foundation for the Restoration of America is thrilled to partner with Moms for America. It's a partnership founded on our mutual belief in the principles that built America. The Foundation for the Restoration of America wants to ensure that America's foundational principles are presented truthfully and faithfully to our children, the next generation of great Americans. We want to prepare them to pursue truth, faith, freedom, justice, and happiness. To help in that pursuit, we have a program that rewards students who study and embrace the U.S. Constitution. Our Constitutional Studies program is provided by Hillsdale College, delivering a solid conservative education in the U.S. Constitution. In 2023, over 500 students from nearly every state in the Union applied to win part of $100,000 in scholarships.
I won a scholarship from the Foundation for the Restoration of America, and I'm so excited about it.
I would like to thank the Foundation for the Restoration of America for the work that they are doing by contributing to young Americans' knowledge about the Constitution and our founding principles.
How can you help America's youth? Help us to get the word out to your students, schools, teachers, and administrators. The scholarships can be used for private school tuition, colleges, or trade schools. Also, the Foundation for the Restoration of America is a registered 501c3, so you can rest assured that your donation will help children directly and is tax deductible. Again, thanks to Moms for America for joining many other like-minded organizations to partner with the Foundation for the Restoration of America. Our partnerships will allow us to offer even more learning opportunities and scholarships to students across America. Please visit us at our booth for more information or check in on the web at ffroa.com.
Awesome to be here in Dallas with so many moms who want to reclaim our culture of truth, family freedom, and the Constitution. I can't tell you how excited I am to partner with and empower you to promote liberty and to raise patriots. I'd like to talk to you about the Foundation for the Restoration of America, what it is, and how we can help you. We all know that the founding truths make our great nation exceptional. They're found in our Declaration of Independence and protected by the Constitution. It all starts with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To protect the blessings of liberty, the next generation needs to be inspired to grab freedom's torch and hold it high. As Ronald Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And yet, we find ourselves on a very dangerous path. Today's youth aren't learning about the greatness of America and the power of our founding because schools are not teaching it. That's leaving citizens ignorant about what America is. Don't take my word for it. Here's what one of our students had to say. Quote, "One of the key problems in America, which endangers our freedoms, is the lack of knowledge that many people have concerning our government, our founding, and politics in general. If we're unaware of these, how can we fight for that? We can't, and we won't. When schools do teach about history, many of them portray America negatively, trying instead to mold activists. As moms, you know that this is happening in the schools. The Foundation for the Restoration of America exists to solve this problem. Our constitutional study program incentivizes students to gain foundational knowledge about what makes America exceptional through scholarships. To apply, students need to complete 8 hours of high-quality coursework about American history, our founding, and especially the Constitution. This program is provided by Hillsdale College. Here's what Sebastian from Florida, one of our winners, had to say. To preserve freedom in America, we must educate those who have lost sight of the United States Constitution. Today, two main factions exist in America: those who have forgotten the Constitution and those who avidly reject it. As concerned moms, we all know our kids need this knowledge to defend freedom for our families. That's why we need you to help spread the word about the program and encourage as many students as possible to take these courses and to apply for a scholarship. I'm filled with tremendous hope and optimism because student applicants are telling us that this program makes a real difference in their lives. One student wrote, with recognition of how tremendous our inception as a nation and our founding fathers' ingenuity really was, immediate defenders of the Constitution will be born with every course. Year after year, that's what we do. We empower more defenders of the Constitution to grab the torch of freedom, hold it high, and pass it on to the next generation. And that's exactly what we're doing, one student at a time. Thank you.
Tanya Parus is the president and managing member of We the People Health and Wellness Center, candidate for Sarasota Memorial Hospital Board, and Moms for America Medical Freedom Specialist. Please welcome Tanya to moderate this medical freedom panel, sponsored by Mammoth Nation.
Well, hello everyone. This is very exciting because I just got to meet one of my all-time heroes back there. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce both of these awesome people on our panel today. These are the fighters in full force. Let's have Kimberly Overton, RN, and Dr. Peter McCullough out. We're in the presence of the biggest medical freedom fighters, I think, right now. Local level, national level. This is really a huge panel for us today. Let me just talk about who Kimberly Overton is. She is a critical care RN and the founder and executive director of Nurse Freedom Network. You also just rebranded.
Yes, Remnant Healthcare now.
Awesome.
Yes.
And Dr. Peter McCullough is a practicing internist, cardiologist, and epidemiologist here in Dallas, which is great. He has dozens of peer-reviewed publications, multiple testimonies, and has commented extensively on the medical response to the COVID crisis on major media outlets. All right, so as a mother of three, who is me, had to fight for my children's rights to medical freedom during the COVID-19 tyranny, because that's what it was. I want to commend you both for being really a true inspiration. So, every time I talk about my kids, I always start to tear up. So I'd like to start with you, Dr. McCullough, if you don't mind. Where are we right now in the fight for taking back power and control in medical freedom?
I think we're just at the beginning, quite honestly. What's happened over time has been a steady progression of loss of freedoms for mothers and families regarding their children's health. And much of this is stemmed around the childhood vaccine program, which I don't know if any of you have been following this, the number of vaccines have just absolutely multiplied exponentially over time. And states progressively are demanding, in fact, mandating that all of these vaccines taken, for children to attend school. And in 2000, the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, that's a chartered organization I belong to, it's largely some of the top doctors in America, published a memorandum on this saying none of the vaccines are sufficiently safe or effective to ever mandate. And everyone should always have a choice if there's any opportunity for harm, any opportunity.
And in the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act legislation, they used the term for vaccines unavoidable harm. And so when COVID came in, we saw this go on, basically just explode regarding side effects and people becoming very concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And kids always at the brunt of it, right? Kids, we even saw, one of our pediatricians, Dr. Renata Moon, she testifies to the fact that children don't suffer from COVID-19 like some of the adults, the elderly adults. So why on earth would we even vaccinate? It's very strange. Kimberly, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think pediatricians, there are some really great pediatricians out there, but overall, the profession has been bought and paid for, in my opinion. A lot of people don't realize that these physicians are financially incentivized, sometimes to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars, in order to stay in compliance with the CDC schedule. And I like to tell people all the time, these wellness visits, they go in and it's nothing more than pushing these jabs, the childhood vaccines, the COVID vaccines. Listen, parents can weigh and measure their children all on their own, and they can track the milestones on their own. And then we can go to a physician, a trusted physician, when they're ill. So I think it's really important to understand that the pediatricians, again, there are some good pediatricians out there, but most of it is just they're shilling for big pharma.
And the same for your veterinarians. Yeah. If anybody's noticed, my dog recently could not get a shampoo unless they took more vaccines.
It's insanity.
Insanity. We were just talking about this. What's going on? So let's move on to another question. I hope this is the one that's a tearjerker for me, but during the time of masking and social distancing and other tyrannical measures, I, as a mom, had to fight the school board for my children's freedom to breathe and to have any form of social interaction. I wanted them in school. I didn't want them learning on the computer. I even had to fight to bring them to a birthday party. Who needs to wear a mask, who doesn't? Dr. McCullough, what advice do you have to us moms out there if we ever get in this situation again?
Let's hope we don't, but currently what the CDC says, just so you know, is that the only time we would need to wear a mask is when we're in hospital respiratory isolation with an acutely sick patient, as we would with tuberculosis or any other illness. That's it. That's it. So this week in my practice, I saw acutely sick patients with COVID, didn't wear a mask, didn't do any of these things because I don't have to, and they don't work anyway. So if anything we've learned on this is that we have to use our common sense and get back to kind of usual rational things. It was never rational for people to walk around who are perfectly healthy wearing masks.
And so about the social distancing, or even masks, I mean, how do you keep a 5-year-old with a clean mask on? And I'm not talking the ones you can sew on the sewing machine. This would be an N95, to my knowledge, is the only fitted N95 would be the only one that would actually might work. So, Kimberly, what do you think about it? Isn't that a little ridiculous what we did to our kids?
It is. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's all about control. And if all you have to do is Google the size of the virus versus the size of the fabric of the mask, and you can understand that everything is getting in there. So it's not protecting from anything. It's about control. And I think that the most important thing that we need to do is understand that the power lies with the people. It does. It always has. And we just need to start waking up to that and understanding the power that we do have. And unfortunately, too many people cowered. Too many people just kind of went along with the insanity and the absurdity. And there are people that are doing it today, and we just need to stand up. But I think, it's important to understand that we have to be okay with being uncomfortable. Until you become okay with being uncomfortable, you're always going to be their slave.
Yeah, I remember we had organized a large group at my son's school to protest against it, and the school board came behind us and forced the school. But it was a charter school, which is odd to me, right? So they didn't have to follow the school board. So this charter school did it anyway. And even though all the parents stood up, we had more than half of the parents demanding that it just be an option. And they still changed that. And we found out it was a lot of money that the schools got for masking.
Yes.
And that was interesting to me on this whole journey, because it seems to kind of all relate back to money. So we talked about this a little bit before. We talked about the childhood vaccination schedule a little bit when we first started. And I know at our primary care center, we've had a large amount of parents that have come in seeking some help because they've been fired from their pediatrician. And that's interesting. I'm like, how do you get fired? And it's because of what you were talking about. So you brought up a good point, and I think maybe if you could dive into it a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes. You know, we see a lot of, we hear about these reimbursements from insurance and stuff, but really what's transpiring, there are goals that these pediatricians and doctors' offices have to hit in order to get money again. So would you guys, I don't care if you want to go, Kimberly?
Yeah, and there's a certain benchmark. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it's pretty high. It's a very high percentage of their practice that needs to be in compliance with that CDC schedule in order to get that reimbursement. I think Blue Cross Blue Shield was 40,000 perhaps, and that's just one insurance. So you think about how many different insurance companies there are that are offering these types of financial incentives. You can see that it's very lucrative for these physicians. But like you said, everything ties back to these financial incentives. A lot of, why I left my career as a bedside nurse was what I saw happening inside the hospitals. Hospitals are not safe places. They're just not. And they are, from COVID test, which is really truly putting a bounty on your head. I don't advise you to get a COVID test because you have that bounty on your head. And from test to toe tag, those hospitals are making, depending on the state you live in, up to almost $500,000 in financial incentives. They're keeping patients on ventilators, and if they keep them on ventilators for 96 hours or more, they get more financial incentives. It's remdesivir, ventilator, death, and that's what I saw over and over again in these hospitals.
Oh, yeah, I have another question following that one after this one. Dr. McCullough, why are you standing up and speaking out, and why are more doctors not doing what you're doing?
This week I was invited to the U.S. Senate, and I turned down Senator Ron Johnson because, I told him, listen, get new people there at the Senate. Some of you saw it was kind of a lot of cast of stars, Laura Logan and Brett Weinstein and Del Bigtree, and really a whole bunch of eclectic public figures. But what I would ask Senator Johnson today is the same thing. Where's all the senators? Where's all the senators? I would say the same thing to you right now. Where are all the other mothers? Where's all the other families? The same question applies. Somehow we found ourselves in a great controversy where some people seem like they can see things clearly and others cannot. And one of the ways you can tell is if you strike a conversation regarding one of these topics, you can tell when someone is in this form of a trance or false narrative, they'll simply say, they'll get uncomfortable, and then they'll say, I don't want to talk about it. That's code word for something is wrong. Why can't we talk about it?
So what would you guys say? What would be your inspirational comment to have more doctors, more nurses stand up and speak about it? And if they did, explain to us what's so different about you guys being truthful and them hiding in the back.
Yeah. I think it's important, and it's important to come at people, and the way you approach people is everything. And I just like to ask thought-provoking questions of people. If you come at people and you're attacking people and their belief system, they're going to shut you down. They're not going to listen to you. You've got to start asking thought-provoking questions. One that I ask very often, I worked through the ICU through the pandemic, and I asked people, if the virus alone were killing people, then why weren't we pulling bodies from homes and off of the streets? Think about our homeless population that weren't receiving any treatment at all. Right? The only place that anyone was dying was in our hospitals, and not enough people are asking why is that.
I would answer that by, I think it's very important that patients and then followers of doctors who are public figures actually start to really give the direct feedback. I don't know if anybody saw it this week, but it was on my my Substack and on my Twitter. Everyone should follow me on Twitter, by the way. I'm nearly over 1 million followers. And I was someone who, I told Senator Johnson back in 2020, I didn't even know what social media was. I thought it was for kids, and I had never been on social media. But at any rate, on my Twitter was Dr. Annette Bosworth. Have you ever heard of her? Dr. Boz, she promotes the ketogenic diet. And she comes out and she capitulates, on her show. She said, for 2 years, my followers have been telling me the vaccines aren't safe. They're seeing blood clots, heart damage, cardiac arrest. And she goes, I wasn't listening. She said, I had my children vaccinated. I had everyone close to me vaccinated. And now I am telling you, I've changed my mind. And I put this out there as a sentinel event, being that we got 1 million doctors in the United States. The estimates are initially only 500 doctors knew what was going on. We were the ones treating patients. We may be as much as maybe 20,000 or 40,000 doctors out of 1 million. We have a long way to go. We have 500,000 nurse practitioners who are also in this trance, and we have probably about 7 million nurses. Now, a greater proportion of nurses are, quote, awake, but there's still many who are in this narrative. They all have to come out. What can you do? Is I think when you can do it in a nice way, is when you have a visit with your doctor and healthcare provider, you can prompt it. Say, listen, should I take another COVID vaccine? The CDC says we're on number 9 right now, which they do. This week they announced that. And the doctor said, well, if the doctor says, well, yeah, you should, say, I've looked at it and I'm not comfortable. I don't think they're safe enough. Or, I've already been through COVID 3 times. And give the doctor the feedback. If the doctor says, well, no, I wouldn't take one now at this stage. Well, good, I agree with you, doctor. I've never taken one, for instance. If that conversation happened every single time, I think they would come. And you have to mention it in the waiting room. You have to mention it to the nurses, don't forget. This is very important. Something has gone wrong in the medical and nursing minds right now. We can talk about it's way beyond COVID. There's other things going on right now that are greatly disturbing.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I call it's like Twilight World. It's very, very odd to me. It's like a psychosomatic, something's not firing right. I don't know if it's the more vaccines and the less firing that happens. I don't know. So we talked about this just for a moment with you, Kimberly, but this is a major issue. It's a life and death issue, one that all of us are susceptible to, but it's the hospitals. And it's what's been going on inside the hospital doors. One of the reasons why I have the clinic and I wanted to be the medical specialist here and I wanted to run for hospital board is because people are scared to death to go to the hospital.
And they should be.
They're afraid. And we talked about the incentivization, right? So we know that for every COVID test, they get money, the hospital does. For every COVID positive, they get money. For every COVID admission, they get money. For remdesivir, they get money. For intubation, they get money. So it's just this stockpile of money. So you kind of, you can't help but look at the hospital and say, so are you pushing people to be positive? Is that why they were running the cycle rates of the PCR tests so high? There's so much mystery around the exact motives. But what do you guys, as a mom, I'm scared for my kids, the cuts, bruises, falls, all that stuff. And I haven't, luckily, not had to take them in. But what do you guys think about the hospital system as it pertains to children? Are they as impacted by being a scared person going into the hospital?
Yes, and I will tell you, it's so important to have an advocate in place and have an advocacy plan in place. Children especially are at risk. If you look at, we just advocated at Remnant, we advocated on behalf of a 4-year-old child who was medically kidnapped. And the only crime that her mother had was asking for them to use a gentler diuretic. They threw this baby into kidney failure. They threw her into renal failure. She went in with an E. coli infection, and they gave her, they were trying to mass flush this infection from her system, and they gave her a cocktail of very, very aggressive diuretics, Lasix, Bumex, and there were a couple of others. And they ended up putting this little 4-year-old girl into renal failure. And it was one medical intervention after the next, this cascade of events that occurred that just kept on going down and having this baby decline. And all the mother asked was for maybe a gentler diuretic, like a hydrochlorothiazide, be used. And for that, for her advocating for her child, they contacted CPS, Child Protective Services, and tried to have the parental rights removed from this family. So and I've been contacted at least 3 times in the last month. Similar stories, a child that was diagnosed with cancer, and the family just wanted a second opinion, and wanted to find out about alternative therapies, because the standard of care in this country is chemo, radiation, and surgery. That's it. If you ask about alternative therapies, they put a restraining order. They contacted CPS and they put a restraining order against this mother so that she could not be in there with her child advocating. So it is very, very dangerous. When I see parents, a lot of times will go into the ER for things that are not necessarily an emergency. And we need to stop that, because it is not safe. It is not safe for many reasons. But to your point, I lost it. Sorry. I had it. It was right there.
You were on such a good roll. Let me just say that these COVID tests can remain positive for many, many months after the infection. So probably if we tested everybody in the audience, there's going to be some of you who are positive. The CDC wastewater data shows that the wastewater is broadly infected with SARS-CoV-2. We've had it for 4 years now. So we should only get a test when someone's acutely ill and is going to make a difference. So they better really look like they have acute pulmonary COVID to get a test. And as a parent, my advice, if a child comes in with an ankle sprain or a case of possible appendicitis or something like this, simply decline the COVID testing. Say, no, my child doesn't have COVID, decline the test. Because if the test is positive, this whole sequence of losing your rights and going into isolation and all of that happens, and one quickly loses ability to control what's going on. So I think it's key to decline the testing. Say, listen, I'm declining this. For therapeutics, when it's acute COVID-19, everyone should know the World Health Organization in November of 2020, and they reevaluated it in May of 2022 and published it in Lancet. They say do not use remdesivir to treat COVID-19. This is very important. Do not use it, because it doesn't reduce mortality, and some people it causes liver and kidney injury, and that can be in the causal pathway to death. So you've got a major worldwide body that right now disagrees with the NIH. That's okay, but as a caregiver and a legally authorized representative, you need to establish these boundaries. Do not use this product. There are plenty of safe drugs that we can use to get somebody through the illness.
Can I just say one more thing? I think this is something that we don't talk about enough, but we have, with so many of the population being vaccinated with the mRNA spike protein, we don't talk about how we've completely tainted our blood supply in this country. That's a real problem, and it's something that we don't talk about enough. And I just want to talk about how we do partner with an organization called Pure Blood Registry. And my organization at Remnant Healthcare, we advocate and we help to procure clean, unvaccinated blood for directed donation, and we facilitate that entire process. Yeah, somebody didn't like that. But yeah, it's that's something that we don't talk about enough, and we really need to continue having these conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know a lot of people are afraid of that very reason of going in the hospital and needing a blood transfusion. How do they know they're not getting vaccinated blood?
Right. They don't differentiate between vaccinated and unvaccinated blood.
Yeah. And you should see when you ask the hospital staff about that, the looks that they give you, it's like we're cuckoo. Yes. So you had brought up, part of the hospital, Dr. McCullough, with the protocols that they're doing. They're still doing those same protocols: remdesivir, intubation, and ultimately kidney failure renal failure, death. So what is it going to take to change that inner working, the inner working of the hospitals? What is it going to take?
We need, I think, at the state level, and I've advised the state of Texas and many others, the state Health and Human Services committees have to call out the hospital CEOs and start having some post-mortem exams on what happened with hospital care. Do you know no single hospital claims to be a center of excellence for COVID-19? None of them. None of them had a better protocol than another one. All hospitals have different protocols, and they compete with one another for patients and to be the best. And when I went on Tucker Carlson, I said, there's no Mayo Clinic protocol for COVID. There's no Harvard protocol. He goes, what? Suddenly, none of the hospitals wanted to be any good at treating COVID. It's inexplicable. They need to be called out. Hospital boards and advisory boards need to call out the chief medical officer, what have you, and say, what are our best practices? What are the rates of the use of mechanical ventilators? So a win would be a patient comes into the hospital, they get high quality medical care, the type of respiratory support they need, don't go on the ventilator and go home. That would be a win. Let's see those positive outcomes. Do you know here in the state of Texas, no hospital has ever published those outcomes? And hospital boards who are independent, they need to call them out on this. These same hospitals want to be the best in cardiovascular disease and the best in cancer, but they're hiding behind their COVID statistics. I think if we actually got hospital COVID statistics out in the open, that'd be the first step.
But wouldn't that introduce lawsuits?
There are lawsuits brewing up, but let me tell you, the defense on this is formidable. In 2005, HHS and Congress wrote the CARES Act. The CARES Act says in the setting of this type of pandemic, which by the way, Secretary Becerra and his predecessor have amended the CARES Act, I think 11 times now. And this is broad immunity. So anything done during the pandemic has immunity from liability suit, according to the CARES Act. People have said, listen, there's got to be a crack in this liability shield. And usually the thought process is if there's fraud involved, if people are defrauded on what the situation is, and if there's malicious intent. If those things exist, it could be game on for lawsuits. But sooner or later, it's going to come out. And it'd be better off having, maybe these types of meetings occur at the state level and there's no recordings, people sign non-disclosures and say, listen, we're just going to get in a room and talk about this. At some point in time, discussion will lead to a better outcome. We're not talking about it right now. And as you pointed out, the same things are happening over and over again.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time. You see that wrap up. So we talked about this earlier. We could sit out here all day and have discussions and have Q&A and wonderful stuff. But thank you guys both for everything that you're doing. You guys are huge freedom fighters in your own world in nursing and as a doctor. I mean, this is what we need more of. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Meet breast cancer survivor, Mrs. American 2022, and author of the national blog, The Blonde Bombshell, Christy Clark.
Hello. I have been on a lot of stages as Mrs. American, but I can tell you I've never been on the same stage as Jesus was last night. That was pretty incredible. All right. So thank you so much for the warm welcome and the honor of being here at the Moms for America 20th Anniversary Summit. It truly is a privilege to stand before you today as a proud breast cancer survivor, a national advocate known as the Blonde Bombshell, a name that my husband sweetly gave me years before, and the name of my cancer blog, a military wife, Mrs. American 2023, and a devoted conservative mom. And of course, as I'm standing up here, who would think that my notes got all scattered? Sorry, y'all. All right. I'm so sorry. All right. We'll just talk. So I was Mrs. American 2023, and as I was going through that, or before I went through that, I am a breast cancer survivor. So having gone through breast cancer, I noticed a lot of things. And one of the things I noticed was that times have really changed, yet nothing is really changing in the medical field. You just heard some people talking about that now. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was one of those that had no BRCA gene, which meant that I shouldn't have gotten breast cancer, but it was environmental, meaning that I have no idea why I got breast cancer. But what I did notice is through everything that we have gone through, the same thing is being thrown to us in the political realm, which is to talk about abortion for women's health. That seems to be all we're talking about. And why is that? As women, we are more likely to get cancer than we are to have an abortion. Yet policy and politics only focus on that one thing in women's health. I sat beside many women day after day going through my chemo, my treatments, as poison was going into our veins to cure us for about $40,000 a treatment. Many having to go home and decide, will I have my next treatment, or will I be able to pay my bills? Will I be able to keep the lights on? Will I be able to feed my children? Why are we where we're at now? Why are we having to choose this for women? And yet our politics are only focused on one part of women's health, which is abortion. So we have a lot more that we need to do. I have a 13-year-old daughter who's here with me, and she would tell you that though I speak all the time about my breast cancer journey, I am also a conservative mom. And as she's sitting here, my children were 13 and 8 at the time of my diagnosis, and here we are 4 years later, and I'm able to share more memories with her, not just about cancer and going through that, but now as a mom of a 7th grader who is really starting to see the changes in today's society. I am a speaker for Susan G. Komen and a national advocate with breast cancer, and I have gone to the halls of Congress and spoken to Senate about the changes that we need to have made in women's health care. And yet, I am old enough to remember a time that wearing our colors of our nation made everyone swell with pride. And yet, even as Mrs. American, I was told that there were certain things that I would be unable to do. I was told that I could not speak of a president that I so adored and watched and cried with my children as he left the White House. I was told that I had to remain politically neutral. Can you imagine being told that as a military wife and then as a mother who's trying to instill this and going up on stage and being crowned Mrs. American and being told that I had to remain politically neutral, that I couldn't speak of our own president of the United States? I could not do the things I wanted to do. And one of the things I absolutely could not do is I could not bring up the name of Jesus in my farewell address as Mrs. American. I had to remain completely politically and religiously neutral. I was actually called off-brand as a Mrs. American because I refused to do that. So I was told, thank you, I was told if I was off-brand that I would be MAGA off-brand. And that's exactly what I did. I proudly took the Mrs. American crown and sash while I was at Las Vegas, and I took it directly to the Trump Hotel, where I stood proudly in front of the term Trump International with my crown and sash on and took photos. I also came back for my farewell address and was told that I would not be able to say the name Jesus Christ or to be able to quote scripture. So that's exactly what I did. I stood on stage with a cross around my neck, and I proudly quoted, for such a time as this, my favorite quote from the Bible about the book of Esther and the woman that we so love. Again, I stand here today with you as a survivor of both breast cancer and wokeness, and believe that together we can all be heroes like the first men that fought for this country and its flag, as we stand here in a similar time, as if we've learned nothing from our past. Our nation's history is encapsulated in the Star-Spangled Banner. It resonates deeply with the essence of our roles as American moms. When Francis Scott Key penned those immortal words, he captured the very spirit that lives within each of us. We are the stars, the steadfast and unwavering, holding our ground in the face of life's storms. George Washington's words echo through our time, reminding us that we as American moms are at that moment where we would rather stand and die as patriots than kneel and live in compromise. Our commitment to preserving the values that make this nation great is the foundation upon which our legacy is built. And Moms for America is one of those incredible organizations that is standing in the gap and making our voices heard. As healthcare advocates, Moms for America supporters, or simply patriots that believe in the very fabric that originally wove this nation together, we recognize the importance of standing up for convictions and being a champion of causes that impact the well-being of our families and communities. It's not just about surviving life storms. It's about emerging stronger and more united, like the threads that weave together the fabric of our great nation. I will end with this. Let us embrace the role that we play as American moms and American women, proud, resilient, and committed to the principles that have shaped our nation. My children will know just where their mother stands and that I stood shoulder to shoulder in the fight for our beloved country. As the wife of an Army officer, he fights the battles overseas while we stay here and fight our battles on American soil for the future of our children. Together, we stand a beacon of strength, echoing the sentiments of those who came before us. May we continue to uphold the values that define us for the next generation and for the future of America.
We are here to defend democracy.
Misinformation poses a threat to our nation's health.
Climate change is an emergency.
Democratic socialism.
Codify one's right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15.
is look, we're all going to answer to him. But I live by that faith. And if we work together and lift each other up, we will build this red wave and red conservative movement that will benefit all of us.
One of my favorite Bible verses came to mind. It's Joshua 1:9. God commands us to only be strong and to be of good courage. Yes, we're a wireless provider. We're a cell phone company. We have great coverage, nationwide coverage on 4G, 5G networks. We have 100% US-based customer support. We check all the boxes that say that we're a cell phone company. But here's the deal. Our mission has nothing to do with cell phones. Our mission is to relentlessly defend our God-given constitutional rights and freedoms and to do so in a way that glorifies our God.
My pronouns are Bible believer, Jesus lover, gun carrier, and mama bear. We give a portion of every dollar we earn to conservative causes, and our 4 pillars are the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, and we support our military and our first responders. And as long as there is breath in our bodies, as long as God lets us wake up to another day, we will stand up for our children, and we will fight to take our country back, and we will take America back in our lifetime.
Patriot Mobile stands with you. We'd love for you to join us. Sign up today.
Please give a warm Moms for America welcome to Lee Wamsgans, Chief Communications Officer, Patriot Mobile.
Hello, Mama Bears. How are you today? I see some Papa Bears out there too. I've got a couple questions for you. How many cell phone companies support your parental rights? How? You get an A. Give that guy a gold star. How many of your cell phone companies support your right to bear arms to protect yourselves and your children? How many of your cell phone companies stand in the gap for the innocence of life? And how many cell phone companies support our military and our first responders? What we know is that Patriot Mobile is the only one doing all of these things. And in fact, Patriot Mobile gave up a significant amount of money to a Patriot Mobile Action PAC. And it's because of the actions of that PAC that where you are sitting today, over 100,000 students in North Texas who previously had woke indoctrinating school boards now have conservative majorities on their school boards. I am so proud to be here today to represent Patriot Mobile to you, and I'm so proud of all of the work that you do. And I'm just here to ask you, please consider Patriot Mobile, because we are standing with you. We are not fighting against you. And we need to support this red economy, and we need to make sure that like we have the backs of each other, that we have the backs of companies who are taking the spears. I know you guys take them because I take them too. We take them at Patriot Mobile, and you know what? We're not here to please man, we're here to please God, so we count it joy every time we're attacked. And we want to thank you for everything you do. Please join us at Patriot Mobile. What I do is I travel this state and I train a lot of people. And something that's important to me as a woman is I have 2 SIM cards in my Patriot Mobile phone, and it has 2 networks. The big guys can't do that because they're only one network. We're on all of their networks. So regardless of where I'm at, I have coverage. Regardless of where I'm at, I have exceptional service. You can bring your same phone over. You can port your same phone number over. It's exactly the same. What's different is we are standing with you. We'd love for you to stand with us. Thank you, guys.
We heard these heartbreaking stories from around the state of kids falling behind. We all knew this was going to happen, but the reality is the National Teachers Union is more concerned with politics, they're more concerned with power than they are our kids.
99.99% of teachers union donations go to Democrats, and they regularly advocate for policies that have absolutely nothing to do with education, from things like abortion on demand to Medicare for all, things like supporting Palestine, things that have nothing to do with educating our children.
Well, unfortunately, I think the only way to read it as the union trying to politicize the pandemic.
The union said it would not bless school reopening until they defunded the police.
We've seen the devastating effect that lockdowns and school shutdowns have had on our kids' education. And I can't help but reach the conclusion that we have teachers unions who are holding our kids hostage.
It's not just academic loss. Mental health problems are also on the rise.
This disproportionately hurt disadvantaged students. So the same people, equity warriors who have been screaming DEI from the rooftops for 2 years, are the same ones that have disproportionately hurt those students.
In the name of sexuality education, children are seeing obscene materials.
I've seen some of the lesson plans that are in play here, and regardless of where you stand politically, I think some of them are quite shocking.
This is pornography. I do not approve of this. My daughter does not need to see cartoon pornography.
I got people who are on drugs, and she 5 times was fired, and I got her job back 5 times. Listen, if you hit the kid, you hit the kid. It is what it is. You go to the Hamilton Board of Education and report this, they're gonna call the police, and they're gonna call parents and all that. We don't do that. We don't do that here. I'm here to defend even the worst people.
There is absolutely a climate of hostility if you speak up against the union.
I was accused of not being fit for teaching. I was accused of hurting a student. I was accused of not being a quality leader, all because I was opposed to being forced to be a union member.
You're ostracized, you could lose friends who are colleagues.
No government employee, including teachers, has to fund a union anymore. But most of them have no idea.
Let's welcome to the stage, founder of For Kids and Country, Rebecca Friedrichs.
Hey everyone, it's so great to be here. And I gotta tell you, the unions are the root. The government unions are the root cause of every evil we are fighting. And I want to tell you a story about some friends of mine, some loving teachers who every single year dig into their own pockets, pay their own money to go to the National Education Association annual meeting to get beat up. Why do they go? To defend you and your kids. They have been pushing back against the radical sex ed for years and years before you ever even heard about it. What happened to them? Well, they went up on the platform and they stayed, in front of thousands of so-called teachers, and they stated that they were worried about the radical sex ed and they wanted to protect the children from that. Well, you know what happened to them? Union leaders spit upon them, booed them off the platform, and then barred them from serving on the health committee. So they couldn't do anything about keeping that radical sex ed out of your schools. The unions are not teachers. They aren't even a union in the traditional sense. Who are they? They're communists. They're communists. They're exploiting teachers to get a handle on your kids, to get their minds and to get their bodies. It's sick, and we need to call them what they are. They're demons, and they're doing the work of the devil. And I'll say that to their horrible faces. So our founders gave us a hint many years ago, American founders. They said the only way to keep a free republic, that's what we are, this crowd knows that, we're a republic, is with a well-educated, moral citizenry that can self-govern. So these so-called unions, these communists, infiltrated our schools on purpose to purposely dumb down the curriculum, to purposely make sure children cannot read, to purposely make them immoral so that they cannot self-govern. Communists have been doing this for a long time. Just read your history books. Those books that aren't in your schools anymore. Because the so-called unions wanted to make sure you didn't know history so you wouldn't run away from this, right? All right. So what I'm here to convince you today is the so-called unions are the root of every problem you're fighting, every single one. You are fighting the branch issues that have grown out of this evil, disgusting root. So I want to ask you, can you join me in a little war strategy? Start helping me fight the root. Because all those evil branches will disappear and clear up and turn into beautiful flowers when we dig out that hideous root. So that's what I'm asking you today. Fight with me in the root. Really quick, I just want to make sure you know a few things about the unions. So I'm going to make sure I don't miss anything. I'm going to look at a list here. Did you know that the so-called teacher unions are behind the transgender push? Boys dominating girls' sports?
and bathrooms, anti-discipline policies that have turned our classrooms into war zones and led to school shootings, critical race theory, social emotional learning, school clubs that transgenderize your kids, wicked school board members, Black Lives Matter. They opened the door to Planned Parenthood, Southern Poverty Law Center, and hundreds of special interest groups that are there to get a hold of your kids. The unions are behind fake science, fake history, lying to parents, taking away your parental rights. And remember yesterday, Jim mentioned AB 2223 out of California, my home state. By the way, we aren't communists in California. Our elections have been stolen for a long time. It's a beautiful state. He mentioned it yesterday, AB 2223. Now in the state of California, you can commit cold-blooded murder against a newborn baby, up to a month old. That's thanks to these wicked unions. They put into office every single person that passed that wicked law, including Newsom. They're behind open borders, abolishing ICE, defunding police, sanctuary cities, and election fraud in so many ways. They also put hater communists like Obama and the Biden administration into office. Teacher unions, did you know, just the teacher unions collect about $5 billion with a B annually tax-free. And they use it all to destroy your country and to harm your kids. And that's just the teacher unions. Most of the government unions are corrupt. They're collecting billions and billions and billions. You know somebody in a government union? Keep them in your brain, because I'm a teacher and I'm giving you homework. All right, first of all, these so-called unions do not represent real teachers. Who do they represent? They represent Marxist, which is socialism, communism, Marxist activists who brutalize and terrorize real teachers. I know, I taught for 28 years in public schools in California. My husband taught 42. We'd both still be there if it wasn't so corrupt. We felt called by God to come out and expose it. So, thank you. So we sued the teachers union. Our case was heard. California teachers sued the unions. Our case was heard at the U.S. Supreme Court in 2016. They say nothing good comes out of California. Nonsense. We're on the front lines over there. So we took them to court, and now did you know that all teachers have been freed from being forced to fund unions? However, about 80% are still paying them. About 80%. That means the unions have a B, we have an F. 80%, that's the unions. Why? Oh, by the way, most teachers are conservatives. Most teachers I know are Christians, and they're still paying the unions. Why? Because they've been lied to. They think they can't get out. They think the union's their savior. They don't know the union's behind all this evil, and they need your help. So here's your homework. I need you to help me reach teachers. Teachers are not the enemy. They're victims, just like you and the kids. So I want to ask especially Moms for America folks who are on radio, TV, you're speaking out. Any of you who are speaking out, don't fall for union propaganda. Communists are expert propagandists, right? So the so-called unions are expert propagandists. They have told you that teachers are the problem. Not so. Union activists are the problem, and they're masquerading as teachers, but real teachers are not the problem. So I'm asking you, when you speak out, please do not don't hand them a gift in their propaganda by saying, I saw a teacher do this to a kid. Teachers are sexualizing our kids. Because they're not. They're not. Great teachers are retiring in record number because they have PTSD, because they can't believe the evil that's happening to our kids and they can't stop it. Or they think they can't stop it. They don't know their union's behind it. So instead, say things like, union activists sexualize those kids. So-called teacher unions are brutalizing teachers. Use that kind of language instead of, buying into their propaganda. And then, can you help me? Here's your homework, besides using the right terms. I am literally a lone voice crying in the wilderness. And I've been crying for 35 years. And the silver lining of COVID, people didn't believe me pre-COVID. They thought I was cuckoo. Now they believe me, right? So now that people believe it, I need your help. I'm a lone voice. Very few teachers will speak out. Most of them don't have a national, way to reach people. So help me this way. I don't usually let my students pull out their phone, but if you have a phone and it's handy, pull it out. I'm taking an exception because I had the honor of speaking at the 2020 RNC, but literally 5 minutes after I spoke, I was shadow banned on every single social media platform. I am still shadow banned. So it's very hard to get the message to teachers when you're banned. So will you please start following us at Rebecca for Kids? It's Rebecca F-O-R, Kids. And hopefully we've been doing reels and things like that to try to break through. But if you'll follow us at Rebecca for Kids, every bit of information you need to help teachers is there on our social media and leads you to our website, forkidsandcountry.org. So that's your first homework. Your second homework is liberate teachers, please. They're trapped in a corrupt system. They don't realize it. A lot of them still think the unions are their savior. Liberate them. All the information you need is at Rebecca for Kids, social media, or on our website, forkidsandcountry.org. And I want to tell you a story just to encourage you so you won't think, people always say to me, it's impossible. Teachers are this, teachers are that. No, teachers are scared. And teachers have been deceived. So a great pastor, Tim Thompson in Temecula, California, took our advice. He started talking to teachers. He used his pulpit. He educated teachers on the truth about their unions being evil. And he got his community behind the teachers, because you know what? Teachers have been alone in this nightmare since before the 1960s. That's how long they've been brutalizing us. He stood with them. His community stood with them. I had the honor a few months ago of watching in person as several teachers, brave and courageous, stood at a school board meeting and abandoned their union in public. Yeah. That's what great teachers do when they're empowered. So I'm asking you to empower teachers. And in my last few seconds, I have a book I wrote to empower teachers, and I want to give it away to somebody. Is there somebody out there who's going to get an A+ on this homework? Raise your hand if you're ready to get an A+. Okay, you get the book. This lady right here in the glasses. I'm just going to lay it right here, and you could come get it, because they're going to cut me off the stage in a minute. So thank you so much. Please liberate our teachers, and let's win this. God bless you.
The sobering reality is that evil exists in our country. We have real enemies. I started to think about what more could I do. We will always have challenges in our lives. We will always have enemies that will come after this country. We're fundamentally responsible for securing our future. When we think about children and we think about the incredible evil that exists, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to bring it up. That's the red line. Our mission is to protect and defend our constitutional and God-given rights, understanding who we are as Americans, what we are capable of doing as Americans when we put our mind to it. Fight Like a Flynn actually was created by the American people. It became a hashtag. Fight Like a Flynn PAC is solely going to be focused on America and America first. Our freedoms are not guaranteed. The faith of our nation is being tested. The destiny of America will be decided on what you do today.
Paid for by Fight Like a Flynn, flynnpac.com. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Christian Briggs is a businessman, hard asset expert, race car driver, and investor. He is the founder and CEO of BMC Capital Incorporated and Hard Asset Management, which specializes in the full service management of hard assets for individuals and family offices around the world. Please welcome Mr. Christian Briggs.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. Just a quick background check on myself. This way you'll kind of get an understanding of what we're going to speak to. I built a pretty large-scale hard asset management company. We specialize in precious metals, rare coins, and other fairly significant hard assets within the hard asset class. And then I did that for about 25 years. 2007, I launched a software company, which we were able to build an extensive patent portfolio, which later, about 12, 11, 13 years later, we were able to sell that portfolio. I sold it for quite a bit of money to some private equity groups. In doing so, I built what at the time was leading edge technology and artificial intelligence that today is being utilized across all social media and things like that. And so when you use any number of media companies, you'll see a lot of the different programming things that we take for granted today that are now starting to get us into a digital age. So where I'm going with this today is, how many of you heard of a central bank digital currency? Wow, okay, well, this is great. Okay, well, we can go right to it. Real quick, central bank digital currency is a centralized system that has three primary focus or purposes, right? Control, surveillance, and containment. Remember those three things. Cryptocurrency is a decentralized system that gives you broad-based, autonomous, and anonymity type transactions. I'm gonna play a video real quick. It's about 3 minutes. I want you to listen to the video. We created this in such a manner to make sure that everybody understands what is here. And I wanna make sure I'm clear about this. It's already launched in commercial viability. So commercial accounts are now using through Citibank, and there's 12 other banks that will be coming online this summer. So we're bringing this to people's attention for two reasons. One, understanding the complexity, but the simplicity. And when I say complexity of what it actually does, but how simple it is for people to get addicted to it, like social media, Venmo, okay? And the second thing we wanna do is to make sure that the young people understand that they're being programmed and conditioned to not even use cash anymore. So with that said, I'm gonna have Danton play first video, which will give you a really good broad view on the first understanding of CBDC, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more detail in it and what we can do about it and how there's a solution out there to bypass what is ultimately gonna be a communistic type payment platform. So with that said, let's watch the video.
Welcome to a defining moment in the history of finance, where the rise of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, heralds a new era of monetary control and surveillance. These are nothing like decentralized cryptocurrencies. CBDCs are centralized government blockchain monetary platforms. Unlike cryptocurrencies, CBDCs represent a digital fiat, controlled, surveilled, and contained by governments around the world, stripping away all anonymity and freedom to transact anywhere in the world with anyone, which are the pillars of privacy and decentralization. In this brave new world, global elitist powerhouses like the IMF, BIS, and central banks around the world are steering the ship. They're deeply invested in centralized blockchain and distributed ledger technology, marking a stark increase in CBDC activities, especially from 2022 to today. CBDCs require a centralized blockchain framework to operate effectively. This infrastructure relies on a digital ledger, which ensures secure and transparent transactions, maintains the integrity of the currency, and enables central banks to exercise monetary control. This graph illustrates a vast array of centralized blockchain projects spanning from bonds and stocks, real estate deeds, car titles, mortgages, equities, to payment processing and beyond. Centralized blockchain digital ledger is now becoming commonplace for many companies, as well as smart contracts, which we'll discuss in part 2. At the center of this transformation lies the controversial emergence of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Proponents hail them as the pinnacle of payment evolution, but there's a darker side to this digital advance. CBDCs will signify the end of financial privacy, granting central banks real-time oversight of all transactions. This will lead to the centralization of financial data and raises the specter of surveillance capitalism, where our spending habits become a commodity for the state. Nowhere is this more evident than in China, where the digital yuan, tied to an Orwellian social credit system. A social credit score is actively being used to monitor people's day-to-day activities based on their citizens' contribution to society. This points to a future where financial transactions will be a tool for surveillance and control. This chilling prospect raises profound questions about the erosion of financial privacy and autonomy, and this surveillance is making its way over to Europe. Executive Order 14067, signed by President Biden in 2022, aims at the development of digital assets. However, this increased government oversight will lead to excessive control over digital currencies, potentially hindering economic freedom and innovation. Many papers predict increased financial volatility and declines in investment. As we stand at this crossroads, it's imperative to recognize the gravity of the situation. The advent of CBDCs isn't just a financial revolution, it's a pivotal shift in power dynamics. one that will forever alter our relationship with money and personal liberty. This is a turning point in history, one that demands our utmost attention and cautious scrutiny.
I hope that didn't scare anybody too much. Okay, so two things. Central bank digital currencies is a system that is in China right now, and of the 43 provinces, 26 are already using it exclusively. In fact, if you were to go to Beijing or Shanghai, you cannot use cash other than taxis. You have to download an app through Alipay. And now that they have established this, in recent months, our Federal Reserve has now launched through Citibank, and you can look this up, all the things that we share here today is public. There are things, obviously, we can't discuss that are a little bit deeper, but today you can look at Citibank. They've already started the integration of commercial central bank digital currencies, otherwise labeled as digital assets that are uniquely serialized in tokens that now can go all the way around the world or stay here domestically. The thing that we try to push, really, and we don't just lead, we try to push the information to people. Gold, okay, hard assets. We've never seen the demand this strong. And I've been selling gold prior to about like I said, 11, 12 year time frame where I developed software, having studied a lot of the software programming on my own, and then developing at that time what was revolutionary ways of point of sale systems. And after I determined that the system that I built was being utilized into a blockchain, centralized blockchain, I knew that we were now on the road to a communistic monetary platform. So what we've advised our clients, and we have family offices around the world, we do hundreds of millions of dollars a year in business. We are regarded as one of the largest dealers in the world in the hard asset market, is that gold is going to start to become more utilized as a payment system. In Europe, South America, it's already becoming that. In fact, if you go to Germany, they're selling gold in kiosks at airports, 7-Eleven type stores. In fact, it's gotten so well widely accepted in South America that about 40% of transactions in South America now are being done in gold bars or gold ETF type stuff. So my next thing is to kind of go over one other area, and that's the programming and the conditioning of children to use Venmo. Venmo is an unbelievably successful social experiment, how people will be able to utilize digital currencies. And I also want to make people aware that we have a social credit score. Does anybody know what social credit scores are? You know what ESG is? ESG is the business side of social credit scores. You know where our social credit scores were built from? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. What they did was they took all the information that we willfully gave them. I think we all have some guilt to this. You know, we gave some things, some less, some more, and they started to build a social credit score. They tied into your Venmo. You ever seen Venmo, how it's all public? I recommend cash. If you can use checks and cash these days, it's the better way of which, thank you. It's the better way of which to transact. Teach the kids cash is still viable. Don't let them go so far so quickly that we become this utopia of the New World Order and the Great Reset. We're agreed, good. The Great Reset is not a religious movement. You understand that? It's the wealth inequality reset. They are going to reset the inequality. That's why gold demand. Let me give you an example. 25 years ago, I couldn't give gold away at $800 an ounce. Couldn't give it away. In fact, if I offered it, somebody would counter offer me at $500. It was crazy. Today, gold's up $48 an ounce this morning on some news. Almost $2,100. We can't keep it in stock. Before it gets to 5 or 10 grand, no matter who you go with, you don't have to go with me, buy some gold. You will see in the next 1 to 2 years how much it goes up. The governments around here are buying it all up, and in fact, they're trying to make it illegal in some parts of the world for individuals. They're going back on gold standards. I got one more video here that I want to present to you. After that, I'm happy to take questions if you want, or you can find me somewhere in the crowd. But know this, the billionaires and the family offices are buying gold from us globally and domestically at unprecedented amounts. They know what's coming. Most people of the wealth are connected. Whether it's DC connected, heads of state, they know what's coming. So I recommend this, whether you have $500 or you have 500 million, please take this very seriously. The CBDC is out. 12 more banks will launch in commercial viability this summer, late summer, early fall. And by 2027, we could be close to a cashless society. And by then, our own estimates, gold should be somewhere between 10 and 15,000 per ounce. It's not a get rich quick. It's a maintaining of your wealth. And if you think this inflation was by accident, you'd have to be literally brain donor to think that $13 trillion in 36 months wasn't going to cause inflation. It's the willful destruction of the middle class. I don't know if you saw yesterday, the Democrats are proposing universal basic income globally. Globally meaning all of the US. That's a dependency society, people. Once that dependency is like welfare and food stamps. Once that dependency is created, nobody's gonna vote any other way because you want that money every month, don't you? You want that green, as we used to say where I came from? If you want the green, you gotta vote for the Democrats. I'm gonna play one more video, and I appreciate everybody's time. If you need me, I'm around, and I have some associate colleagues here also that can answer any questions. I just don't know how much time I've got left, so I'm gonna play the video, a couple more minutes, and then we'll go from there. Thanks.
In a world where digital payment services like Venmo and Cash App dominate the landscape, a new generation is being told, use only digital, never cash. But what's the real story behind this push? Behind the convenience lies a darker agenda. Governments worldwide are shaping the mindset of young individuals to accept digital payment systems, relinquishing financial privacy and control to governmental oversight. This emerging generation risks intertwining their social credit scores with platforms like Facebook and Instagram. Complicating matters is the fact that these social media platforms have clearly violated privacy rules. Facebook has invested in image processing and face recognition capabilities that allow Facebook to track you. Everything you post is publicly available. In a recent report by Internet 2.0, TikTok mines excess amounts of personal information on iPhones and especially Android phones, including hourly location checks, contact books, calendars, almost complete access to your phone while you're scrolling the app. None of this information is necessary for TikTok to run. This leads us to believe that the only reason this information has been gathered is for data harvesting. Facebook inserts a tracking cookie into your web browser that allows Facebook to track each website you're visiting. If a hacker wants to see the information you've posted, they'll find a way to find it. It's crucial not to expose your children to this vulnerability. Forced into a cashless society, with warnings against creating checking accounts, the youth are unwittingly paving the way for unprecedented government oversight. Every tap, every transaction, monitored. A report from Experian in 2019 revealed that 1 in 10 millennials use their digital wallet for every purchase, especially on food, rent, and ride shares. This has undoubtedly gotten worse in the 5 years since. The research also found that about 34% of adults under the age of 50 make no purchases in a typical week using cash, compared with 23% ages 50 and older. In a report by payments firm Marketa, 59% of adults aged 18 to 24 were comfortable leaving their wallet at home in favor of their phone, as opposed to only 36% ages 51 to 65. The Corporate Transparency Act and FedNow are steps towards centralized asset control disguised as progress. As the stage is set for central bank digital currency rollout, centralized control over finances looms large. Let's not sacrifice our children's financial autonomy to those who aim to exert unprecedented control over them in the digital realm. Ensure their finances aren't susceptible to government seizure by teaching them principles of wealth creation and preservation.
So now you're getting an understanding of what's here. It's not what's coming, it's what here. And so I would implore, as a father and grandfather, to teach your kids to use cash still. And also wealth protection. Get some gold. Go out there. It's going to go much higher. I've been doing this for many, many years. I have a family office that I have run for, I'm close to 35, 40 years now. And I can tell you this, I'm very good at what I do and I'm always right. And gold will go higher. Get some wealth protection. Wealth creation is one thing. There'll be a day soon when you won't worry about the greed of wealth creation. You'll worry about the fear of wealth confiscation. Make no mistake about it, okay? All right, any questions? I know we got 5 minutes. Oh, the young lady's right here. Gold what? Goldbacks, I think goldbacks are okay. I mean, they have a definitive place in society. I know Texas just approved a goldback dollar or different denominations. So we're starting to, think about this. You got 3, 4, 5 states now that are eliminating paper currency, and they're going with gold currency. So it's physical, but it's made of gold. It's tangible. Now, there's a reason for this stuff. These governors, these Republican governors, understand what's coming. They've got the same information at their fingertips. A lot of us do. I know a lot of members of Congress, and I'm fortunate to be able to say that they're dear friends and they're close colleagues in various ways. And the information that they do share with me makes possible for the states now to go to a gold currency. And that will help. I will make no mistake about it, it will help. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Love silver. Silver, listen, if you believe in the climate change, nonsense, but let's say you did, solar, electric vehicles, wind, you got to have silver. So fundamentally, if these crazy people achieve the success, which they probably will to some degree, and it continues to proliferate itself around the world, then silver is a very viable investment. We love silver. In fact, silver costs about $30 an ounce to get out of the ground. It's selling for, I don't know, $23.50, $24 now. It's good business to buy it under production cost. Anybody else? Sir? No, sir, don't have a booth, but you can't miss me. Just look up. I'm right here. I'm the tallest guy in the room probably, so you'll find me. But I will be happy to give you guys cards, answer any other questions. But know this, what they're trying to do, and we got to get Trump back in 24 hours. Amen? Come on. Oh, we have a question. Okay, so you have two things that the SEC, the DOJ, and the FBI are diligently trying to destroy is decentralized cryptocurrency. If you haven't noticed it, they put Binance pretty much out of business. If I was the government and I had this communistic utopia ideology, I sure wouldn't allow you all or anybody else to transact in a decentralized system. I can't track it. I can't control it. I can't add your social credit score to it. Decentralized systems are the anonymity we all have and we want. Cash is a decentralized system if you think about it. Gold is a decentralized system. Stick within the frameworks of what those contexts of that means is. And I will tell you this, you'll be happy in 24 to 36 months if you stick to these same fundamentals. Use cash, use checks, and get hard assets. It is decentralized. We are in a centralized. Venmo is centralized. It's centralized. It's called peer-to-peer payment system. You have to have it centralized. Decentralized, it would be all over the place. Okay? It's like a plane without a rudder. It just goes everywhere. They don't want that. They can't control it. Yes? Paper gold, not so big of a fan of it. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if I'm going to put 50 grand, 5 million, $25 million into gold, I want it right here. Okay, when the stuff hits the fan, say that, or the sky falls in, you know what? I want to be able to get out of here. And I'll take my gold, put it in the trunk of the car, and toodles, right? As my daughter would say. So with that, oh, yes, ma'am. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to work through those kind of things. I will say this, you're not going to have somebody maybe believe it in the first day, but if they do have those type of retirement accounts or equity accounts they're building, you can tell them one thing. The average family spends 3 weeks a year to plan a 1-week vacation. The average family spends less than 5 minutes a year to plan wealth protection. Wealth protection, tell them. What happens if the sky falls in? What happened in 2008? Gold tripled. I can remember families calling me, individuals calling me saying, my equities were down 70%, my gold was up 300%. Who saved whose house? If you have to, these young people need to look at history. What are the Democrats doing? They're wiping history out. They want to eradicate all the things that we learned from so that the new religion of the Democratic Party becomes their history, both past, current, and future, correct? Am I right about this? So teach the children, show them what has happened in the past. And I will tell you this, God said, my money is gold. Remember that, he gives it to the people. How did we know 5,000 years of gold had an intrinsic value the way it is today? We knew this from day one, it's because of what it is. So with that said, I'm out of time here. So I wish I had more to explain more, but, oh, well, we're going to, one more. Ready? Hard Asset Management. Here's my website, bmcham.com. And I'm Christian Briggs, and I thank you so much and I appreciate everybody's time.
We've reached the end of the halfway mark. Everyone is invited to a fabulous lunch in the tent where LuLaRoe will be presenting a fashion show. See you back after lunch.
Moody versus Net Choice. Mr. Whitaker?
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.